Bing, bong, boom. We've done it. Here we are. Another stream, another time. Here we are. Underneath the emergency measures rule of the Trudeau administration. Congratulations, we can have our bank accounts seized. All kinds of draconic actions can now take place here in Canada. So much for the rule of law, right? So much for any of that. Our leadership feels that they can just declare an emergency when there is no emergency and start doing whatever they fucking want, right? Thank you, Islam. How you doing today? Barnabas, the people disapprove the shave. I knew there was going to be some dissent. Don't worry, a beard is going to come back. I feel like I look better with a beard. I just don't think I'm going to let it get so large and intense again. I think I'm going to try to keep it fairly cropped. Try to take care of it, man. Like, it had to go. It had to go. For my own mental health, it had to go. Honestly. So, I mean, what are we talking about today, right? The continuation of the Emergency Measures Act, the continuation of the unfolding, diving into the repercussions of such a thing. Why was such a thing needed to be done in the first place? I mean, and one of the things that the right wing is starting to put together, is how much influence the World Economic Forum actually has in Canada, right? Like, here is something that is coming out of the right wing subreddits that I follow, right? That they are starting to actually put together something I always knew, right? Something that I thought was actually fairly ubiquitous and fairly well understood, that the Liberal Party and as well as the Conservatives are all in bed with the World Economic Forum. Like, when I talk about the capitalist death cult, like, the World Economic Forum is at the heart of this, right? This unelected body that was erected by Third Reich bankers, right? And has continued down the path, and they're starting to put together these lists. And you can see Justin Trudeau's on this list, Chrystia Freeland, Doug Ford, Mayor Watson of Ottawa, Jagmeet Singh, John Tory. And of course, if you go back far enough, right, Pierre Poilievre is on that list, right? And the right wing is struggling with what to make of all of this. And the reason why the right wing is struggling what to make of this is that they don't accept that the Conservatives and the Liberals are allies, right? That's the fundamental thing that we are coming to terms with these days, is that we don't actually have options in our democracy. There isn't actual genuine conversation. There isn't an actual genuine understanding of what's going on in our political establishment. We don't understand what it means to have been overwhelmed by corporate power, right? We don't understand that, like, we still largely believe that, oh, I'm mad at these liberals, so I'm going to go vote the Conservatives, and that's going to somehow change something, right? Like, absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. The Conservatives and the Liberals work for the same people, to embark on the same objectives. The reason why the Conservatives are standing up against the use of the Emergency Measures Act is because they're currently playing the good cop, right? That it's a good cop, bad cop relationship, that the Liberals are currently playing the bad cop, and when power swings over to the Conservatives, right, the good cops, well, what are they going to do? They're going to continue the project of wealth extraction and abandonment, right? That's the strategy of both the Liberals and the Conservatives and the NDP, that we are embarking on a path of wealth extraction and abandonment. It's a strategy. It's a goal, right? The World Economic Forum might as well be stating it straight out. And yet, enormous sections of our populace are falling for it, right? But I'm doing the best I can to let people know what's going on. But, you know, I'm a very small channel, which is why you guys got to tell people. You got to let people know I exist, because I can only go so far. And I can only, like, I make a video a day. I've been taking a break from doing that for my own mental health during this period of time, but tomorrow I'm going to start it up again. Because, like, people are talking as if, oh, the liberals have done this, so I'm going to go to conservative or I'm going to go to NDP and all this, and nobody seems to understand that, like, no, that's over, dude. Like, that's been over for a long time, right? Like, the liberals, conservatives, and NDP are the same party. They operate under the same people for the same reasons. And all they're trying to do is find out the culture war position in order to sway the populace to vote for them for vanity reasons. That's all. Like, that's it. Like, and if the choice, and this is not well understood in the populace, but it's absolutely the truth. If the choice for Justin Trudeau is to improve the material conditions of his constituents or lose power, he will choose lose power. Because he would rather leave office and then go work as a consultant for one of these firms for like $1 million a year, right? Have a 6-figure salary, do like 2 speeches a year, act as a consultant for these guys, then confront capital and actually improve the conditions of his citizenry. Right? Like, that's what is happening. And Pierre Poilievre will make the same decision, and Jagmeet Singh will make the same decision. Because at the end of the day, they're there for their own vanity. They're not there to improve conditions for Canadians. They never were, and they never have been. Right? Corporate power has overwhelmed our system entirely. And this is the reason why they're using this Emergency Measures Act. They're calling for this Emergency Measures Act so that when the populace falls into protest because of the desperation that has been created due to these forces, well, they'll just be able to shut them down, right? They'll be able to just get rid of their bank accounts. They'll be able to get take their assets, whatever small assets they have, right? They'll be, and like, literally just arrest people. Like, this is the path that Canada is on, and it's gotten quite obvious, frankly. But Canadians are very, very gullible and are easy to deceive, and don't really know what's going on at all, and so we can just buy into this idea that, like, yeah, the conservatives and the liberals are against one another. No, they're not. They're allies. They work together. Yeah, Klaus Schwab's dad was a literal SS Nazi, worked to the assistant of Joseph Mengele. Just think about that. Yeah, exactly. Like, these guys have deep ties to the Third Reich. Glorious beards cost money. Material conditions are only going to get worse. Absolutely. I have to commend Canada for embracing psychedelics the way they have. The oligarchs know that the people need a little bit of consciousness changing. I mean, that's only happening, like, again, like, the liberals are trying to find the death cult is looking for any angle it can to try to convince people to just go to sleep, stop paying attention. And if they can put people into drug-induced stupors, they will, right? Like, if you are gonna just fall into homelessness and just do drugs for the rest of your life and die on the streets, good, fine. That means that you're not part of the conversation any longer. Like, what do you think is going on with the opioid epidemic in the United States, right? Just have huge segments of your population fall into an opioid crisis and have your population deal with this. Oh, it's the same thing they did to China with oh my God, with their drug crisis, right? They got huge amounts of Chinese people hooked onto drugs, right? It's why the Chinese Communist Party is so anti-drug. Because they're like, they know what it does. They know what it can do to a community. And so the American, like, the death cult is absolutely spreading as much of that into the society as they can get away with. Because not only does it mean huge sections of the populace fall into drug-induced stupor and suicide, but it means that there's an enormous amount of fallout. And that societies and cultures need to deal with this issue directly. They can't confront capital because they're dealing with the destruction of their society from this flooding of opioids into the culture, right? It's the exact same thing that you saw the British do to the Chinese. Like, It's a tactic. It's a strategy to maintain control in the society. And it's not even a fucking like. Sometimes people look at me and they're like, John, sounds pretty conspiratorial. It's like, dude, like, they're literally, like, the Americans and the CIA are growing poppies in Afghanistan, right? Why? For heroin and opiates, right? Which they funnel into the United States. The CIA has admitted this. This is openly stated. Like, this isn't new information. And we're just going along with it. Breaking, MPP Randy Hillier may not be recognized in the Ontario legislature until he sends a written ledger of apology to the speaker for his conduct on social media. Yeah, I mean, this is just showmanship, right? This is just showmanship, like action for action's sake. Like, it's not serious. It's not actually something serious. PM Trudeau says Canada will stand against authoritarianism, announces sanctions against Russia. Yeah, like, that isn't that funny, right? Like, literally, Trudeau might actually be the most authoritarian prime minister we've ever seen, right? The evocation of the Emergency Measures Act puts him very far on the right, like very, very far on the right, especially considering the how unnecessary it is, right? Like the Emergency Measures Act, like, it doesn't need to be evoked, and there's going to be serious legal consideration. Like, it might not even pass the charter test, right? Every piece of legislation that passes the House has to go through like a charter check and there's an organization within the government whose entire job is to be like, does this piece of legislation actually pass through a charter examination? And it probably won't, right? Like, it probably won't. And but I don't think Trudeau cares. I think that he's going to get what he wants out of it. He's going to use it to attack the people he wants to attack. And when I talk to leftists about this, like, I talk about this to leftists on all kinds of subreddits, and people seem fucking clueless, right? They seem completely unwilling to accept that this is obviously going to happen. Well, you think they're just going to leave communists alone? You think they're just going to leave people on the left alone? Like, nope. Like, this is going to have serious ramifications. We're going to be dealing with this decision for decades and decades. Like, there are going to be lawsuits in the Canadian legal system for decades because of this. And again, it's just a method to assert dominance and control on the populace. Pierre Poilievre is WEF. His Twitter shows how out of touch he has been in the past week. Where are his tweets against the intense violence and frequent attacks against EA silence? No, because it's all just pandering, right? It's all just standing up and declaring, we're against the Emergency Measures Act, but like he's not going to shut it down. Like, he's not going to do that. This is the way business is going to be done in Canada now. Good news, even if it's only one person, I was able to convince one of my friends. That is good news. To start investigating leftism, and he loves so far what the left stands for. The only downside, he won't be able to really get into theory after he graduates university. Baby steps, Eric. Baby steps. I'm glad you had a positive interaction, dude. That's actually really good news, man. That is really good news. And just goes to remind us, it is all about just talking to people. It is just about making the connection, making your case, right? And trying to get through all of the bullshit. Like, because that's the hardest part, right? Getting through the bullshit, getting people convinced that you should be even listened to, right? Like, I've talked to people all the time. Like, you bring up the word communism and they shut down. They're incapable of continuing forward. It's just reefer madness, right? And if you can get someone through that and over that, or on the other side of that, that's a big win. That's a big win. This becoming first they come moment, because for once it's nice to see white people getting arrested. I mean, and there is definitely a enormous, like, I've seen people who I've had on the show, who I have interviewed, who I have had on podcasts, and they're like celebrating the usage of the Emergency Measures Act against these fascists, like completely unaware that, or in total denial that this is going to be turned against leftists in big, serious ways. Like you think they're not going to do it? Like, I think you're out of your fucking mind. People are saying they saw Trudeau was skiing yesterday in Quebec. Yeah, would not be surprised. We need an emergency and you're skiing. Yeah, I mean it's all just for dominance. This makes me ask where was the big booze business to fight the prohibition laws in the 20s? I mean, it seems as though in like, really think about this. Like, in the United States, they passed prohibition, which was an amendment to their constitution, and then very quickly turned around and re-amended it. Like, that implies that there's a much a deeper willingness 100 years ago. Like, they were doing that without the internet. They were doing that while still fucking communicating with like barely telephones. Like literally like still using like fucking messengers and shit. And they managed to get that organized, right? It really speaks to how fractured the political system has become on purpose. That the corporate power structure does not want anybody to be able to get anything done, right? Like, and that's why nothing is happening. Get nothing done. Why? Because the corporate power structure is already in control. They already have power, right? Now it's just about extraction, right? And the dismantling of any institution that can actually stand up against their authority. And right now, the World Economic Forum is really showing that the goal is to just infect it. Just infect it with your own people, convince them that the only way forward is by subserviating themselves to the death cult, right? And it's working, right? We don't actually have options in Canada, right? Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau, and Pierre Poilievre, they're all part of it, right? They're on the fucking website. You can go look them up. Opium Wars. Yep, thank you, Watson. And he absolutely loved your video about how much money is $1 billion. Yeah, and it really opened his mind about how the system really operates. Yeah, like, people don't understand how much a fucking $1 billion actually is. Like, $1 billion is an enormous amount of money. And, like, and people, like, they have this idea that, like, oh, so John, you're telling me a billionaire is, he's going in there and he's just bribing people? Well, we would see that. We'd be able to track it. It's like, no, motherfucker. He invites them out for dinner in his gigantic mansion, probably helicopters them in, right? Surrounds them with beautiful people, the best food they've ever eaten, right? Gold watches and crazy amounts of shit going on. And just gives them, like, and has throws a party, has these guys all talking to each other, like, makes connections for them. Just like, oh, hey, here's this person over here. You should meet this person, right? They could help you out with this idea, right? All of this kind of stuff. And then at the end of the night, just say, hey, I look forward to working with you in the future. Like, what? You think these guys are going to say no? Right? The overwhelming corruption of this kind of wealth. Like, you don't need to open a suitcase full of gold bars or anything. You don't need to be like, if you work for me, like, literally, their existence is the bribe, right? That every politician knows and understands that once they're out of office, they go and work for you, right? They go and work for the billionaire. That's just tacitly understood. And if you work against the interests of the billionaire class, then when you're out of office, you won't work for them, right? It's very, very obvious, and it's very, very clear. And people seem to just be stuck in this mindset of like, yeah, they've got to, oh, he gave him $100,000 bribes, right? Like it's fucking like the fucking, like, what, 1820s or something? It's so fucking, or it's like goddamn, like, mafia gangsters. Like, no, it's much more streamlined than this. Like, it's much more, like, not only do they have a training center for these people, right? The World Economic Forum is a training center for these neoliberal shills, right? But they also, like, completely like mollycoddle their balls after they're out of office, as long as they do what they're told, because it's about obedience, right? And if at any point someone like Justin Trudeau had have been like, wait a minute, this is actually going to hurt Canadians, he wouldn't be in office. Like, he just wouldn't be there. Like and it is that simple. It is that straightforward. That if you actually say at any point, like if you're like 10 years old and you're just like, wait a minute, this is all fucking bullshit. Like what a waste of my time. Then you're going to get has a lot of potential on your report card, and you're just not going to ascend. You're going to get the C or the D, right? And you're just not going to ascend because the only thing the system vets for is obedience, right? It's the only thing the system vets for, and no one is more obedient than Justin Trudeau. He's a good little boy that does exactly what he's told. And you can see that with this picture right here. This is the picture that they released, the Liberal Party released after they cleared the streets, right? It's subtle, but it's incredibly narcissistic, and it's incredibly arrogant, right? Like, these streets belong to who? They belong to Justin Trudeau. That's what this is telling you right here. What are you not seeing in the streets? You're not seeing trucks. You're not seeing disorder. In fact, you're not seeing any traffic whatsoever, except a few cars kind of smattered in the background, right? You're seeing Trudeau just casually walking across as if he's like a fucking beetle, right? Just casually walking across the street because he is in complete control. He is completely safe, and he owns the street, right? Not these protesters, him. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a more arrogant picture come out of the Prime Minister's office than this. Yeah, well, I'm done voting. I think I'd be out voting. Could be in a folk country song. This is in that movie about that gangster. Took opium from Vietnam. Yeah, there's no politician in power today that has their interests at heart. Absolutely. Like, even somebody like Andrea Horwath. Like Doug Ford just announced that they're going to do away with license renewals, right? Get rid of the stickers and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, that might do it. Like, he might be the next leader. Like, he might win the next election because of that kind of tepid, limp. Like, that's how pathetic Andrea Horwath has been. Okay, anyway, on to Ukraine. We'll get there, bud. There are some city councils who are legit. Mike Layton, Paula Fletcher, Gord Perks. But, like, these people aren't actually pushing in the direction, right? Like, they're just happy to be in council, right? Like, just pretend. It's like pretend progressivism, right? Just like pretend, and people like it. It's when you're watching the WWE, there are people who are like Hulk Hogan, right? There are good guy characters when you're watching the WWE, right? People who you were really rooting for, people who you want to see do well and face adversity, right? And that's AOC and Bernie Sanders to a T, right? Like, there are heroes in WWE, and they're supposed to be the heroes, and they're understood in the media and in the political sector as the heroes. And those heroes are leveraged in order to funnel energy away from the true centers of power, which is the streets, right? Which we saw completely with the Freedom Convoy, right? Like, Justin Trudeau is evoking the Emergencies Act over it. That means he's terrified of it. That means that it was effective and it was working. Right? Like, that they are scared of this kind of action. They know that that's how they get ousted. Just like what happened in Kazakhstan. Right? What happened in Kazakhstan? The people stood up and told these guys to get lost. Right? And it's a full-scale revolution. Right? The leadership of that country and the leadership of the nation, including like the general of the military, fled the country. Right? Like, it's over for these guys in Kazakhstan. Like, the people are going to erect their own governance, and they're going to do away with this neoliberal grift, right? And it doesn't look like there's going to be a recourse in this. Like, and they know it can happen here, and they know it should happen here. And so what are they doing? They're passing an Emergency Measures Act. So if the people start doing that, they can start shutting them down straight away, right? They're not going to let it spiral out of control. Because Justin Trudeau is making it very clear that he owns the streets, right? But he doesn't. The people own the streets, right? He is supposed to be our servant. Do you think he's acting that way? No. Not that it will matter in the long run, but has anyone seen Leah Gazet's speech on the House this Saturday? I've not. That's actually not technically true. A premier or prime minister can pass whatever bill they want. The only time that it gets shut down is when the opposition party challenges the bill, sometimes use a referral to the Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of Canada, where the court will make it constitutional or not. If the bill does get passed, it's up to the people to challenge the court system to overturn the bill. Yeah, I mean, you're getting into the real technicalities of it. And you are technically correct. Billionaire influence. Look up Paul Demaris Power Corporation. How many PMs articled at his law office from Pierre Trudeau to Paul Martin? Yeah. Haircut looks nice. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, are you talking about my haircut? Yeah, I have it in a ponytail right now, but I do have, like, I feel like the shave really augments my floofy, flowy hair. Yes. I think I am going to go back to a beard, but probably something. Jean Chrétien had a pic of him giving a homeless man $10 while his policies marginalize the vulnerable. Yeah, I mean, Jean Chrétien is like, he basically, like, he said that he was going to eliminate the GST and then did fuck all about it. All right, you guys are calling the numbers, so let's get to it.
Here we go for today's number.
We already got a 7, we got a 4,
February
we got a 5.
22.
I'm going with 10.
2022. 10 balls.
We got a
Each
4 from
ball
Harry.
has
Doubling
a
up on the
number.
4. That means it's going to be a 4.
Numbers
You
1
watch.
through 10. Swirl the numbers.
Oh, grinning in with me on a 10. Look on these with a 6. Got a 3, we got a 2, we got a lot of 4s.
Pick a number.
A lot of 4s. Methane in with a 9. Good to see Methane.
Today's number
Good to
is...
see oh, we got a 3.
3.
That's Branwyn. Ding, 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 ding. I think Branwyn, you're the winner, right? You're the one. So yesterday I didn't actually stick to my system. Today I am going to do it. And it's a 3. So this is going to be, I think I know the song that this is going to be. I promised myself that I'm going to try, yeah. So it's going to be a little softer today. I know, 2022, it's Tuesday. The Wizard says, never shave. Once you commit, there's no going back. Kids are savages. David Lynch? That's synchronicity? Yeah, I think David Lynch is amazing. All right. You know what? I'm gonna make you all watch me tune this guitar. Guitar tuner, guitar tuner. I should have tuned it before the show, but I had a friend over, so I wasn't able. This is gonna be a bit of a softer one. And who said, somebody said I should do the, like, Colonel Sanders for the next beard? Nah, thanks, bud. You know what beard I actually do really well is the Riker. Riker from Star Trek: The Next Generation. That's the beard of choice for me. All right, here we go. Oof. This is great content, eh? Watching me tune a guitar. There we go. All right. Asked her kindly put down the gun. You don't need to hurt anyone, she said. The world's too hot, the people are too cold. I'm not gonna bother getting old. My work turns to bombs, my life's a lie. No one will notice if another girl dies, and doesn't need to be this way. 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 Christ collapses in an olive grove, prays with blood to his God above. Please, my Father, find another way. Please don't take my life away. The humans know not what they do, and must I die before they'll see the truth? And it doesn't need to be this way. 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 She asked me kindly, put the needle in. I can't bear this world of sin. I'm racked with pain and I wish to die. Only God knows the reasons why. Why do people want to live this way? A soulless people who forgot to pray, and doesn't need to be this way. 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 That's a John Sanderson original, you bet. Every song I play here, unless I've explicitly stated otherwise, is an original, for sure. No, the goatee makes me look like an evil villain. Makes me look like an evil villain. Rewatching TNG lately, not far into season 2. Good for you, bud. Good for you. Next Gen is the greatest, man. It's the greatest. You know what? There's one song I was thinking about today. I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it right now. This is not, of course, mine. Now Play It Like That by Cardi B. I'll get right into that, bud. Cardi B. I'll get right on that, dude. In my eyes, indisposed, in disguises no one knows, hides the face, lies the snake, the sun in my disgrace. Boiling heat, summer stench, neath the black the sky looks dead. Call my name through the cream and I'll hear you scream again. Black old sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black old sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come? Stuttering, cold and damp, steal the warm wind, tired brand. Times are gone for honest men, sometimes far too long for snakes. In my shoes, a walking sleep. In my youth, I pray to keep heaven sent hell black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come? Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come, oh, won't you come, won't you come? Yeah, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. When this song was popular and first released, every time I turned on the TV, I swear it was playing. One of the only music video I watched back then. Didn't normally have much music. Yeah, it's funny how long it's been. This music video, too, and I think the reason why this song speaks to me is it really is speaking to, the whole music video is about, the ennui of being alive and our inability to face it and our desire for the void and how the lengths that we're going to, the nightmare of suburban culture and the nightmare and the falsity of our presentation, the falsity of our culture, right? Chris Cornell, I think, understood what was going on in our society in very serious ways, that we were declining into this decay while smiling about it, while grinning like idiots about it. Yeah. I used to have big sideburns. I've done everything. Anything you can put on here, I've done it. 1979 by Smashing Pumpkins. I don't, unfortunately. The plastic fakeness speaks to me. Well, I'm actually quite fond of the people who are doing it on purpose. You know what I mean? The people who are the tattoos and the piercings and even the Botox and all of that kind of stuff. That all makes a lot of sense to me, right? That let's present ourselves as false as an artistic expression. Oh yeah, this is the one I want to sing. Reverse mohawk. No thanks, bud. I went with the classic pointed devil goatee, curled stash actually. It went with me. I only kept it trimmed and it went where it wanted to. Only good to from the pandemic. And WF, yeah, okay. Can you play Pokemon's theme song? I want to do my very best, right? I was just a little too young or a little too old, rather, for Pokemon. All right. You gotta get ahead of the human race, and we're the lazy ones working at the end of your nukes and your guns, and we don't even care. Bring on the doom, line up this apocalypse, we'll be going soon. God let his chosen ones wander forever in the burning sun, and 10 times worse the fate for us. Forget him, worship the dust, 'cause we don't even care. Bring on the doom, line up this apocalypse, we'll be going soon. Baptize us with rising tides, never let us see what hides inside, and cover our sins with dollar signs. The fire will burn away our pride, and you could have done anything at all. You could have done anything at all. You could have done anything at all, and you chose this. And we don't even care. Bring on the doom. Light up this apocalypse. We'll be going soon. We don't even care. Bring on the doom. Light up this apocalypse. We'll be going soon. We don't even care. Bring on the doom. Light up this apocalypse. We'll be going soon. Yeah, we'll be going soon. about the Sesame Street theme song? Get the fuck out of here, Watson. Get the fuck out of here. Fucking guy with your fucking funny day. Everything's A-okay. Everything you need. Can you tell me where to get? How to get to Sesame Street? How to get to Sesame Street? Yeah, that's right. Do like a heavy grunge rock version, right? It's like when Aerosmith did a version of I Love Trash, right? Like it's a what's his name? Oscar the Grouch song. I love trash. Well, and then Aerosmith does a version of I Love Trash, and they like fucking nail it. They like fucking nail it. All right. That was a fun little diversion. Fun little music time, right? Always good. I'm glad the guitar's back, man. Boy, howdy, am I ever glad that this is back. I'll probably around 8 o'clock. I'll do another song. I'm just so fucking over it, man. Like, I'm over this bullshit. Like, Justin Trudeau, Pierre Poilievre, all of these fucking guys. Like, why are we following these laws? Like, they obviously don't care about their own laws. Like, they obviously don't give a shit whatsoever. Right? Like, they're evoking this Emergency Measures Act. Like, get fucked. Like, get fucked completely. Like, the protests were over by the time they actually passed the act. Right? Like, they didn't meet they didn't meet any judicial kind of, because they don't care. Like, they don't give a fuck about laws, right? And like Justin Trudeau right now, Justin Trudeau is like, anytime anybody, especially liberals, but anybody wants to be like, oh, China's authoritarian. Oh, Russia, they're so authoritarian. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, Justin Trudeau literally meaninglessly evoked the Emergency Measures Act so that he could just fuck over everybody, right? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, yeah, China's so authoritarian, like, get completely fucked. Get completely fucked. And the people who are supporting this are, like, literally nail in the head about as stupid as they can be. Just like, yeah, I think it's a great idea that Justin Trudeau can just shut down everybody's bank account, right? Yeah, anarchy is not anarchy when the ruling class is anarchist. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's why I'm not an anarchist, right? Like, communism, first and foremost, thinks that we should have stability, right? Like, if you're not in for stability, if you're not in for, like, order or rules or contemplation or talking or democracy or any of that shit, then you're probably not a communist. Like, we're just, like, in this total fucking bullshit. Yeah, no, and the Wizard, you're absolutely right. Like, it's chaos, and they've said it all along, right? Let the free market decide. Well, explain to me how that it's any different than saying let chaos reign. Like, really, someone needs to explain this to me. What is the difference between the phrase the free market will decide and let chaos reign? I do kind of want to know where this dark money came from. I mean, dark money. Like, citizens, right? People donated money to a cause that they believed in, and now they're losing their jobs and losing their employment, and they're gonna have their bank accounts shut down. I just recently listened to this. I highly recommend everybody. I'm actually going to put this in the, like, I can't believe that I'm actually sharing something that comes from the National Post, but they actually have a pretty good conversation with a constitutional lawyer about this, the Emergencies Act, right? It's about 45 minutes long. And he covers it pretty clearly, right? The Trudeau administration can do what they want, right? They can shut down bank. They've already done it to people, right? Like, if you donated $100 to this protest because, you know, you are in favor of protest and you think that we should be supporting protest movements, well, you can have your bank account shut down. You can lose your job, right? They can ruin your life. Right? They can ruin your life with this legislation. Like, it's absolutely vicious. And the idea that, and there's no legal recourse to it. You can't even go to the courts because the courts will just be like, well, this is the Emergency Measures Act, right? Like, too bad. That's what you will be told. And if this legislation pushes through and becomes the law of the land, then this is how the Prime Minister's office will operate from now on, right? And they're never going to come down from it. They're never gonna, like, there's no such thing as a temporary measure for the government. Like, once the government uses this kind of power, this is the power that they have now, right? And they can just arbitrarily decide to detain people, seize people's assets, right? Could it starve people? Of course it could, right? We could get back to the old blacklist. Are you a member of the Communist Party? Shit, with this, absolutely we could. Like, you can just straight out blacklist people with this legislation. It's incredibly vicious. Only if you donate. But Harry, they're not going to make that distinction. Like, they're not going to make that distinction. Like, if they want to shut your bank account down, they will, right? And they don't need to justify it. That's the nature of the Emergencies Act. They can do what they want and just say that it's in the interest of the nation, right? They don't need to justify it, right? They don't need to justify it because you can't have a legal recourse against it, right? Like, it's the Emergencies Act is the definition of draconian legislation that is intended to be implemented in periods of enormous war, right? Like, I expect the Emergencies Act to be implemented when we are being invaded. That's when you use the Emergencies Act, so that you can move resources around quickly, so that you can rout out spies, so that you can actually get a quick, agile stability in periods of enormous duress. And none of that exists right now. This law is being enacted and implemented after the protests were already cleared. Like, what was the point of it? Well, the point of it is to implement legislation or to implement policies that are going to be extremely damaging to the populace. And also, incidentally, to scare the shit out of leftists. Well, you think someone like me, right? You think they're just going to let me continue organizing protests? You think they're just going to let me keep doing this shit? You think they're going to let a guy like me, who has been saying we should surround the halls of power? You think they're not going to be like, oh, hey, here's a guy who's actually organizing protests and protest movements, right? We're just going to let this guy keep moving around. Like, what do you fucking think is going on here? Right? And again, what is it going to do to the online left? It's going to keep them online, right? And they're going to look at people who eat it, people like me, who are going to eat it, right? And they're going to say, oh, I don't want to eat it. I'm happy to stay online and just talk about it, right? Don't organize, though. Don't actually get into the streets. Don't actually do the thing that the power structure is actually afraid of, right? The power structure is actually afraid of people surrounding the halls of power and confronting capital. That's what they're afraid of. Yeah, just watch the Black Hole Sun video. Yeah, man, it's powerful stuff. Like, it's powerful stuff. Like, Chris Cornell knew what was up. Like, he knew what was up. Yeah, it was supposed to be temporary for World War I. Yeah, of course. Oh, you will for sure. That's the goal. Mine's empty, so giver. Yeah. They'll just give banks incentives to do it, and banks will go and find accounts to flag for profit. Easy, yeah. According to Ukrainian news site Strana, UA shortly after Putin recognized Donetsk and Lugansk, shelling subsided and the capitals fell silent. Of course. Right? Like, what the Western media is reporting this as is a Russian invasion, when the reality is like Donetsk and Lugansk, I'm terrible at the pronunciation, right? They declared their independence, which is their right to do so, right? It's the right of any organized people to declare their independence. And Putin recognized it, right? I've been reading news at the Donetsk news agency, right? And the same thing happened with Crimea, right? That Crimea was reported as an invasion when it really is more or less a diplomatic passing, right? That, like, the people of Crimea and now the people of Donetsk and the people of Lugansk are saying, we would rather be part of Russia than continue to deal with the Ukrainian government. And so what this does, politically speaking, is it is going to entrench far-right fascist, like Nazis into the power structure. That there isn't going to be a check. The people who are voting for more pro-Russia, more integration with Russia, were the people who just declared their independence, right? And of course Russia is recognizing them, right? And soon the UN will follow, right? Because they're an organized people who have the right to declare their independence, right? And very shortly thereafter, I'm absolutely sure Russia will move in. I believe I saw an article already that they're moving in peacekeepers into the region in order to transition to being part of Russia. And of course, the West is going to report this as if it's like this abomination or this horrible thing, when it's like the people of these regions have declared their independence. They have said that they don't want to be part of Ukraine. Russia is moving in troops to ensure that that actually occurs, right? And the people will eventually, because you can't really be independent in this world, they'll move towards Russia, which is what they wanted in the first place, right? That's what they were voting for in the first place in Ukraine, right? So this is a like, only the West can report on diplomatic solutions as invasions, right? And it really is showing the overwhelming weakness of the West, right? That like they are going to be defeated in the end of all of this. That what they are going to be left with is a Ukraine that is just completely full of Nazis. What of the Azov Battalion? Yeah, they're still in power. They're in Ukraine, right? Like, and we're still funding them. We're still supporting them because we fund neo-Nazi groups. That's what we do. MP Julie Griftowich voted along party lines in favor of the Emergencies Act. She also voted against a wealth tax. She could not care less about the Canadian populace. She's part of the WEF. Yeah. No, and this emergency act has finished me with the NDP. Like they're done in my eyes. Like these guys are on the grift, right? They're part of the grift. That they exist so that should the populace finally throw its hands up at the Conservatives and the Liberals, they'll go to the NDP, who are just calling for wealth taxes and not arrests, right? That any rational, reasonable, thinking person who has a brain in their heads would be calling for arrests, right? We should be arresting these people. Like, they're criminals. They're obviously destroying the society for their own personal profit. We should be arresting them. We should have, in the climate change issue alone, right? We should be holding major tribunals and routing out these overt grifters who are obviously destroying the civil society, if not the species, for their own personal profit and their own personal gain. Like, we're talking about demonic figures who are as dark and evil as anyone who's ever walked the earth. And with the evocation of the Emergencies Act, it's starting to become pretty obvious, don't you think? Like, don't you think, right? These guys are here to protect capital exclusively, and they are willing to destroy human life in order to do it, right? And that's the role of the NDP. The role of the NDP is so that should the populace actually reject the psychopaths, right, the Conservatives and the Liberals, well, they'll just be funneled under an umbrella where the punishment for the wealthy will be taxes. Oh, you've got to give back some of those billions. Some of those billions. You certainly don't need to face jail time. You certainly don't need to face a tribunal. You certainly don't need to go to the Hague, right? Which is where these guys belong. Like, all of them. Like, it's brutal what's going on. Yeah, funding legit fascists, shaming the people. Exactly, Wizard. Like, that's exactly it. Like, that's the hysterical nonsense of this Trudeau administration. That he has evoked the Emergencies Act because he's like, oh no, fascists, while literally funding fascists. And there's credible evidence to show that the fascists that they have funded overseas have turned around and funded neo-Nazi fascist groups in North America. So that there's a nice little circle going on here, right? Nice little circle. Interesting how that works. And so it's the self-licking ice cream cone. So Trudeau funds neo-Nazi groups, who in turn fund neo-Nazi groups. So Trudeau can do what? Enact this fascist legislation, the Emergencies Act, while continuing to fund neo-Nazi groups. Like, nice little Nazi circle going on there, right? Like, Justin Trudeau should do prison time for what he's done at bare minimum. Like, at bare minimum. And until people are in prison, I don't think we're actually taking any of this shit seriously. And so, like, this is what the NDP stand for. They're there to protect capital as a final bulwark, so that if the populace actually does swing to the left, they'll be there to pick those people up, funnel them into a dead end, and then tax $1 billion away from a guy with $50 billion. And people will be like, yeah, we got him, when the billionaire won't even notice it, right? Meanwhile, he'll just go to his pedophile island, have sex with your children, and continue raping the nation. Like, what the fuck do you think it's all about? Like, it's obvious now. Like, I don't know what you need to see. Like, I don't know what you need to see anymore. Like, these guys don't care about you at all. The only thing they care about is making sure you're in your place and doing what you're told, and that you're nice and obedient. And if you're not obedient, well, then they'll just shut down your bank account and round you up using the Emergencies Act. Right? Like, what do you think this is for? Like, and I talk to people who consider themselves leftists, and they're just, like, clueless about it. They're just like, oh, no, the Trudeau administration would never do that. These guys aren't your friends. Like, what the fuck do you think? Like, this guy's not your boyfriend. Like, he's interested in power for himself exclusively. And he's more than willing to destroy you for it. The guy's funding Nazis. Like, what do you need? Like, what do you think? When the guy's walking around wearing blackface, he's doing it because he likes black people? Like, what the fuck? Like, what the actual fuck do you think is going on here? Like, martial law, conspiracy theorists kill their dogs. Oh my god. While the Emergency Act was being enacted, Canada sent $500 million as a loan to Ukraine, which we will never see again. Of course. Yeah, joke's on them, I ain't got no money. But, like, actually think about how serious this is, right? Think about how serious it is to have your bank account shut down. That means that you literally can't buy food. It means that you literally cannot buy food. It means that you can't pay rent, right? So much for your credit score, so much for any of that, right? Like, all of that's over. Like, it doesn't matter if you have no money. It means that you no longer are part of the system of securing food and shelter for yourself. That's what's at stake here. And we're just letting them have it. Like, are you kidding me? Do we need more evidence? And half the nation supports this, including many leftists that I talk to. Leftists, as if there's a leftist movement here in Canada. Like, the absolute absurdity of this, and the absolute embarrassment of the Canadian people, to just roll over and show their belly and just be like, yeah, Daddy Trudeau, give it to me, baby, right? Like, we're just simps for capital, and it's just gonna keep beating the shit out of us, which I think is what we like, right? I actually think that there are people who are into this, who are just like, you know how there's like submissive kinks, like financial degradation and financial dominance? I think there's huge sections of the populace that are like, yeah, degrade me, baby. I think they love it. I think that's why they're voting for Trudeau, because he's dominating them, and they love it. Funny how communists and literal actual fringe views more sensible than the insanity in mainstream, so clueless just beyond. Yeah, when they turn off the power and you freeze to death. Yeah, like, it is going to take, like, but even then, like, I don't think the populace comes around, even as the abandonment becomes clear. Like, as homelessness spikes, as all this kind of stuff happens, yeah, I think that there is, like, a pretty heavy masochist line. I think there is, like, this pretty heavy, like, and the worship of suffering, right? Like, because then I guess that means they're feeling something, right? That we've become so detached from empathy, compassion, happiness, joy, that, like, we've become so numb that as long as we're we can take joy from the suffering of others, and at least you're feeling something then. Yeah, financial degradation is a kink. It's kind of funny. I mean, yeah, it is kind of funny, but I think it's real, and I think huge sections of the populace are into it. Where did the savages of Brave New World live? Opt out, demand a place to go. What else can you do? Surround the halls of power. That's what you can do. Like, they literally can't arrest everybody. No, it's going to get really, really brutal. Like, they essentially, with the Declaration of the Emergencies Act, what else is this but a declaration of war against the public? Like, that's what it is. The Emergencies Act is supposed to be a declaration of an emergency. It's it's the predecessor of the War Measures Act, right? Which is an equally draconian law, and was designed specifically to confront war, right? Well, if they're invoking it, well, what are they doing? They're declaring war against who? The populace. Like, and don't fucking fool yourself. That's what's happened. And the quote unquote leftists. I need a better word than this, because there's some leftists. Like, who are these leftists? Like, I don't see any of them. Who are these guys? Right? Like, I see a lot of liberals pretending to be leftists. Like, yeah, I'm more progressive than my dad, is basically where we're at. Like, this is a barbarous act of a declaration of war against the public. Like, and everybody's just kind of like, I guess, the band. Or they're like jerking off because it's currently being used against the people they hate. Right? People like Tamara Lich. Like, pseudo left. Yeah. Like, there really isn't a leftist movement in Canada. It's over. Like, it's done. Yeah, Stockholm, they all recognize it in the other, they don't in themselves. Well, and we're caught in this sort of dichotomy of believing that the conservatives and the liberals and the NDP aren't just like one party, right? Like, they're the business party, they're the capitalist party. That what they are doing is to specifically keep power within the halls of power, right? Within the death cult. Yeah, I'm afraid to buy Russian stuff online or donate to anything online. Will they freeze my bank? Who knows? Exactly. That is true if they could get everyone. Woke eels. Yeah. Like, just anything but class, right? Lib lefts. Like, just fucking liberals. Like, that's all they are. They're just fucking liberals. Like, they don't actually care about confronting power. They don't actually care. Like, and if you're supporting this bullshit, like, get completely fucked. Yeah, why economists say it's a bad idea to rely on a privately owned bridge for 25% of Canada's trade with the US. Did we need economists to point this out? Like, is this how fucking stupid we are? And, like, it's time to really start admitting that we are just very stupid. Like, oh yeah, we let a private investor take over a bridge that we require for 25% of Canada's trade. Like, what do you fucking think is going to happen? Like, how do you think this is going to go? And this whole, like, it's more efficient. It's going to be more efficient. Like, how? How is that going to be more efficient? Like, if I'm a privately owned fucking bridge for 25% of Canada's trade, yeah, I'll toll it. Yeah, there's a toll. What are you going to do? I own the bridge. What are you going to do? Right? And, like, our political sector is so weak and so gulled and like so co-opted that they don't even give a shit. Like, they don't care. You would think they would at least be anti-war, but liberals can't even do that. Yeah, I mean, no. Like, these liberals are showing that they're just as bloodthirsty as the conservatives, right? If not more so, right? Even the conservatives weren't funding neo-Nazis. Right? Like, you got to look to the liberals to get the neo-Nazi funding. To be fair, lib economists have nothing left to do but make things up. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, that economics has become, like, It's not a science anymore. Like it doesn't care. Like if it ever did. Like they don't actually care about how things function or work. It's an ideology now. It's strictly a religious ideology, right? And the religious ideology is very clear. Extract wealth, abandon the populace. That's the beating heart of the ideology. As much wealth as can be extracted from the society, and then just abandon the society, and that's supposed to make it go. But that's not what they're interested in, right? They're just interested in wealth for themselves. Yeah, trolls under bridges, yeah. Minister President Marcus Sauder plans to reorganize the Peruvian state government. Yeah, off he goes. Off he goes. I don't know enough about that to comment on it, really. Efficiency in the private sector is the same as productivity, i.e. less people doing more work for less money. I mean, let's get real, man. When they say efficiency, they mean slavery. Like, that's really what they mean, right? The most efficient model under capitalism was always slavery, right? That's what, and you can read the book Cotton is King. I've got the book sitting right here. It's called Cotton is King, where it was a book that was written by the pro-slavers on the lead up to the Civil War in the United States, and they explicitly said that efficiency was the number one reason we should maintain the capitalist, the slave system, the chattel slave system, right? Like when they say efficiency, they mean slavery, and we shouldn't bullshit ourselves with it, because ultimately, right, it's not that efficient a system. Right? Like, it takes a lot of energy to ensure that your slaves are in line, right? It's a full-time job to ensure that your slaves do their job, right? And that's as true for wage slavery as it is for chattel slavery. But efficiency in this context means you do all the work and I do nothing, right? That's efficiency, right? If you're doing all of the work and I'm doing nothing, then the system is efficient, even if it isn't, right? And as long as you are trapped in this cycle, that's why they don't want to do like a 5-day work or 4-day work week. That's why they're not interested in hearing about like, oh, hey, if you actually like stabilize people's lives, they become productive and all that kind of stuff. They don't want to hear any of that, because all they care about exclusively is that you're doing all the work and they're getting all the money. Like, and if they can make that arrangement happen and you get paid nothing and they get paid everything, they're happy with it, right? And it's the reason capitalism ultimately collapses. Because eventually, and we're already there, the wage stops paying the rent. It's very straightforward. It really does show how far they would go. If this was a test run, the real show would be ugly. They're better off asleep, but how do we get away from them? Yes, wealth extraction precisely. If you are poor, your wealth is your health, intellect, and energy. They must extract all three. Exactly. Right? Exactly. That they need you to be obedient. That's what this system vets. That's what our education system vets for. That's what the corporate sector vets for, is exclusively obedience. Do what you're told. And as long as you do what you're told, then you'll be a successful little cog in their little machine, right? And the minute you stop doing what you're told, they dump you and replace you. Like, that's the nature of the system. And so where do the contrarians go? Where do the artists go? Where do people who have alternative viewpoints or want to erect alternative models go? They get fucked. They're the homeless people, right? They're the ones who get abandoned into the streets because it's a fucking death cult. It's not interested in humanity. It's interested in itself and the perpetuation of the destruction of the species, which at this point I'm more than happy to say is purposeful. Like, they're doing it on purpose. Like, they want to destroy the species on purpose. Like, there is no other explanation at this point. Like, any human with any kind of base survival instinct would be like, climate change is a serious threat. Like, not only from like an abstract concept, but a very serious threat to like me and my children. But they don't even care about their own children. Like, they don't care at all. Like, Justin Trudeau doesn't give a fuck about his own children. Like, they can get fucked. Like, Stephen Harper was walking around saying, oh yeah, climate change is a problem for my grandchildren. I'm not going to do anything about them. They can get fucked. right? Like these guys have no moral conscience. They have no soul. Like they literally are abandoning not only their own constituents and the public, they're abandoning their own children. Like I don't know what we need to see at this point. Like I don't know what we need. Like, do we literally need Justin Trudeau like raping a little girl in front of us on national television? Is that where it's gonna need to get? Like, do we literally need to see these guys? Like, do we actually need to see the CIA death squads walking through the street shooting children like they did in Afghanistan? Do the CIA death squads need to be going through the streets of Toronto shooting children? Like, is that what needs to happen? Like, it seems like it's so obvious that these people are psychopaths. Like, it's so obvious. And now they're evoking an Emergencies Act. Like, someone like me, how long until they fuck me up, do you think? Like, let's get real about it. How long until they fuck me up? Who wants to take bets? Right? Who wants to take bets? Yep, wage slavery, maximizing the surplus value created by wage labor. Planned economies can be more efficient. Planned economies are more efficient. Like, the Soviet Union was the strongest economy the Soviet Union was the strongest economy of that century. They were the first people into space. Like, they defeated the Nazis. Like, planned economies can be more efficient. Literally every single time capitalists and communists have fought in full-scale war, communists have won. Every single time. Like, the capitalists have done a lot of destruction. The capitalists have blown a lot of shit up. But they've lost every single fucking time. Right? And nowhere is that clearer than in the full-scale, like, industrial warfare that occurred between the Soviet Union and the Nazis. Right? Soviet Union's a communist planned economy. And the Nazis are a capitalist, privately owned, like, neoliberal economy, basically. Like, and the Nazis lose. Like, what do you need? Like, the Chinese right now, walking around saying we're socialists with Chinese characteristics, right? Like, they're the strongest economy on the planet right now. Like, planned economies are more efficient. They work better. Why? Because they have a plan. Because they've made a plan. And where is this most clear? In the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative began in 2008. They started building the Belt and Road Initiative in 2008. And they had, like, almost no rail in the country whatsoever. And now there's rail everywhere, connecting everyone. And they're building it into other nations. It's this enormous trade network that they've erected all throughout the continent and all throughout the world, covering every land that they possibly can. And they're still expanding it. Where's North America? Where's our high-speed rail? Some of this rail goes as fast as 600 kilometers per hour, right? We don't have a stretch of that, right? We don't have one single rail laid. And why? Because the capitalists will never, ever actually, allow it to occur, right? There's no money in building infrastructure, right? They can't extract wealth from the populace more efficiently. Why would I ever spend my money for that? I already have all the money, right? Like, it's vicious, right? And the capitalists will do everything they can. Like, if a government decided to stand up and say, we are going to build rail from, let's say, Toronto to Montreal, well, all of a sudden that land would be bought, wouldn't it? Right? And all of a sudden, oh, the government wants to build on that land. Well, it's premium, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, that's what would happen. And so all of a sudden, this project that should take a year, right, is now going to take 20. Because they're going to do everything they can to get in the way and stop it. And in the meantime, the planned economy of China, like, this is what's actually going on in the Ukraine, right? This is what's going on in Ukraine, is that the Americans understand that they cannot build their economy up anymore, right? That they can't actually negotiate with these psychopaths, that the psychopathic oligarchs have taken over and aren't interested in building or maintaining infrastructure. aren't actually interested in doing anything to help anybody because they're psychotic. And so the strategy now is the strategy of a psychopath. Well, if I'm going to stay on top, I would rather stay on top of a shithole, of a shit pile, than actually build anything up and improve anybody's life. And so they're destroying everything. Because if they can destroy everything, then they can stay in charge. Like, that's what's happening. Like, have Ukraine be destroyed, and so Russia can't develop it, right? So Russia can't grow, Russia can't improve its economy, Russia can't get anywhere because we're blowing it up, right? What do we got? We got Barnabas half a year. Oh, yeah, good. That's a nice expedited timeline. Health, enough to work, but too sick to escape. Intellect, smart enough to pull levers, too dumb to object. Energy, repetition, motives, but too weak to fight. Yeah. Maybe we need to see Star Trek disintegration chambers. Ugh. No, because, like, our society is so stupid and backwards that we'll be like, yeah, disintegrate those guys. Yeah, haha, they deserved it. They should have just obeyed. Right? Like, that's what the conservatives have been saying this whole time, right? Well, who cares if the government gets these draconian powers? I've got nothing to hide. Yeah, they could just pull me over and check my shit out. I got nothing to hide, right? I'm a good obedient serf. I got nothing to hide. My caveat has to do with socialism's tendency to overproduce. Capitalism underproduces. I mean, capitalism doesn't underproduce. Capitalism overproduces. It just doesn't distribute, right? Like, that's the problem. Like, capitalism will literally take the stuff it produces and throw it in a garbage bin before it gives it to a homeless person. Like, that's the issue. The first anthrax vaccine for animals was developed in the USSR. Hot tip from Muck. The only reason Latin America failed to go socialist is because they were still trying to vote communism in. Big mistake. I mean, I would argue that the only reason Latin America failed to go socialist is because there was a heavy invasion by America and multiple coups and the destruction of the country. Like what happened in Chile, for example, right? With Milton Friedman as the head economist, right? They invaded Chile, fomented a coup against the socialist government, installed Pinochet, right? Erected torture chambers. Like they transfer. Like imagine if one of the stadiums that existed in your society literally became a torture center, right? That happened in Chile. So like, yeah, America is a brutal, psychotic nation that is doing everything it can, and it'll do it. It'll do it here. Like, let's not pretend it won't. Like, it absolutely will do it here. Same for artificial hearts and the Ilizarov apparatus. I don't know what the Ilizarov apparatus is. Sounds pretty cool, though. Capitalism, my gripe, is that the subpar is made. Resources are not allocated to the most, the best, the peak. It's cheap, mid, premium. That always bothers me. Well, things are designed to be destroyed. Like, that's the point. Everything needs to become obsolete in 5 years at most. Because if you create something that is permanent, well, then you can't sell a bunch of them. The auto industry figured this out. In 1969, Toyota designed a truck that was essentially indestructible. Their goal with this truck was to build an indestructible truck that could be fixed with like a screwdriver and a wrench. Like literally, that was the goal. And they achieved it, right? They built this truck, a 1969 Toyota. You can look up on YouTube. There's videos of the show Top Gear did an episode of this truck where they what did they do to it? They put it on a beach and allowed the tide to come in, right? They allowed the tide to come in on the truck and then recede. Right? And they went up to it expecting to need to do repairs on it. They literally put the key in, turned it on, and it revved up. They put it on top of a building. They blew the building up. And blowing the building up, so this thing dropped from the top of a building, fell down to the earth, right, was covered in rubble. They had to uncover it. The axle was snapped. They walked up to it, did some minor repairs on it, revved it up, engine came on. Like, they built an engine, they built a vehicle that was indestructible, right? And then they never did it again. Why? Because if you sell one of these things, well, that's no good. You want to sell 1,000 of these things, right? You can't sell something that's gonna be good forever, right? You need to destroy these things, right? On purpose. That's capitalism, baby. Right? It's an enormous grift. Like, it's a failed system. It's a religious ideology exclusively that does not work. It's a total waste of time, a total waste of resources. It's a waste on every single level. Right? Yeah, we need all that back. Small cottage industries are trying. All of those industries are gone, dude. Like, all of those industries are gone. Monopolists are taking the society over. What do you think all of this inflation is for? Like, what do you think this is all about? It's to destroy, it's to absolutely destroy small business and small industry and force people to buy from monopolies. Like, it's the game of Monopoly. Like, play a game of Monopoly. What happens? You think small cottage industries are going to survive? Right? No. They get bought up, they get bought out, they get shoved out. Right? When the government does bailouts, you think they're bailing the small guys out? No, they're going to bail out fucking Amazon and Walmart. That's what they're bailing out. And they don't give a fuck about these guys at all. And more importantly than any of this, you can't vote your way out of it. Right? So if Doug Ford decides to bail out Amazon, right, and says fuck you to the little guy, and the little guy goes, well, then I'm going to vote liberal. What do you fucking think the liberal is going to do? Like, what do you think the liberal is going to do? The same thing. And then if you go, oh, well, then I'm going to vote NDP. Well, then the NDP is going to raise taxes by 0.0001%. You're going to go, yeah, we raise taxes 0.0001%. That'll show them. And everything will be exactly as it is. Like, we're in a place now where we literally cannot vote our way out of this. That story is over. And we're getting to the point where if we actually do the things that we need to do, which is to surround the halls of power and shut down critical infrastructure, right? Well, they're gonna move forward with the Emergency Act, right? They're gonna shut down your bank account. They're gonna pick you up, right? Probably take you to a black site somewhere, and you disappear. That's the Emergency Act, baby. And the idea that they're not gonna do it to leftists is a fucking joke. I think you gotta have a fucking nail in your head to think that way. Yeah, parallel development, wasting twice as many resources, withholding patents, formulas, and methods from other firms. Exactly. Right? Like, forcing everybody to do all of the research independently. And this is supposed to somehow, like, be efficient. This is supposed to somehow be, like, a better way to do business. Because, like, competition breeds innovation. Like, I think you gotta be a moron to think this is real. Like, competition breeds innovation? Like, get totally fucked. Like, you're literally saying that we'll put all these crabs in the bucket and that will somehow allow them to climb a ladder. Like, it's incoherent from the start. And you don't need to think that hard to realize that that's the truth. Right? Because you're forcing everybody to do all of the work over and over again. And then also, don't forget about, like, corporate espionage. Don't forget about getting in each other's way. Right? Don't forget about any of that. So instead of everybody working together to facilitate a goal, and, like, one group finds something out, shares it, and then the other group takes it and figures something out, and, like, they all work together to collaborate to create something really excellent so that everybody can have access to the benefits of this. It's crabs in a bucket. It's just constantly pulling everybody down, constantly pulling everybody down. And what do you end up with? You end up with a shithole country, right? Like, you end up with, like, a fucking power grid that fails when you need it. You end up with, like, billionaires grifting the society with this cryptocurrency nonsense. You just end up with nonsense. And the society being ruled by a group of rapacious psychopaths who literally aren't even willing to go after actual pedophiles that exist in the society. Like, it's brutal. And the destroyed small business owner will be used against the working class as the shock troops in a fascist crackdown. Exactly, Watson. That, like, those people will be turned against who? The minorities, right? That's the grift, right? Oh, your small business failed because we had to support the minorities, right? Oh, those minorities came over and took your job, right? Like, and pretty clear. Any rube who thinks the Emergency Act is only temporary and is only in effect until mid-March, well, I have some swampland I'd like to sell you. Yeah, I mean, that's basically half the electorate, right? Like, and including many leftists, the pseudo-leftists. I like pseudo-leftists because it like, that term pegs them for what they are, right? Pretend leftists. Like, they're not real. Yeah, have had that argument at work. Corporate espionage for sure. There's a place for disruption, but there's a point where it's no longer disruption. It's tripping over each other nonstop. No collaboration, yeah. And this point is going to become painfully obvious. Like, it's going to be painfully obvious. China is going to just jump ahead of us. And it's not going to be like small little incremental things. They're not going to edge us out. They're not going to squeak past us, right? They're going to jump past us in a way that makes us look like fucking morons. The technology that they're going to have access to, the stuff that they're unlocking, that they're implementing, that they're dealing with now, is literally the difference between having a car, like a fucking Lamborghini, and a horse and buggy. Like, we are going to look like total dickheads. We're not going to be able to compete, even if we wanted to. We're not going to be able to compete. Like, and there is coming a time, and if it isn't already here, where we actually won't even be able to confront China militarily, even if we wanted to. Because China is going to have computers that are so fast, that are operating at such a high level, that if we shoot missiles at them, they'll be able to take them over in real time and drop them. If not fucking shoot them back at us. Right? If a fucking fighter jet goes over their land, they'll just be able to go and take it over. Right? That's already here. That's quantum computing. Like, the Chinese are going to be operating on a level that is going to make us look like baby's first war. And when the Chinese decide that they have overwhelmed the American military with their superior technology because of their superior method of organizing their economy, they're going to move into Taiwan. That's the moment that China is going to declare to the entire world and to everybody around them, oh, we're not afraid of the Americans. The Americans are stupid. Like, their technology is childish. Like, literally. Like, all of the money they've spent, this overwhelming military that they have, all of it, it's just scrap. It doesn't amount to anything anymore. Right? And the Americans know it's coming, and the Americans can't do anything about it. Why? Because the capitalists don't build. All they give a shit about is their stupid, incestuous for-profit model, this worship of money, right? Where they're willing to just bury themselves in a hole as long as they get $1. And meanwhile, the Chinese are like starting fusion reactors. The Chinese are building quantum computers that are 100 times faster than any other computer that's on the planet. The Chinese are making plans to build a moon base, right? Like, what are the Americans doing? Failing at taking over Ukraine. Failing at taking over Afghanistan. Failing at taking over Iraq. Getting their asses kicked in South America and getting kicked out of there, right? With, incidentally, an economy that's collapsing, a society that's falling apart, and that is likely to balkanize. Like, we're the embarrassing state of North America is if it isn't already apparent, it's going to be so obvious. Like, so obvious. In very short order, too. Way sooner than you think. But the moment, mark my words, clip it, clip this right now, hold it over my head. When China goes in to Taiwan, that is their declaration that the American military supremacy is over. That they literally no longer care about these guys. They're not afraid of them. And they shouldn't be, because they're going to be ahead of them. Like, it really will be like, if you've ever played a game of like Civilization, right? And when one guy has musketmen and another guy has fucking fighter jets, it's going to be like that. That you're just going to be like, well, they have fucking fighter jets. Like, I only got muskets. Like, the game's over. The game's over. And the declaration of victory will be when China moves into Taiwan, which is coming. At least by 2049. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair timeline. Like 2050. Yeah. That it would be the ruined small business owner, that's more plausible than they want to believe. On the tech, I'm a data scientist, machine learning, computer vision, NLP. Yeah, it's done. Like, the Americans aren't even trying. Like, that's the part that's because the Americans have privatized everything, right? So what are the Americans busy trying to do, right? Well, you got fucking Elon Musk trying to do this Neuralink shit, right? So one of their top billionaires is wasting all their time torturing monkeys by installing chips in their heads so that they can scream to death, right? And then their other billionaire, Mark Zuckerberg, is fading into a digital fantasy world called Metaverse, right? And then what's Bezos doing? Bezos just building big fucking boats and shooting his ass into space, isn't he? Right? Like, none of these guys are actually motivated at all to do anything at all, right? It's the great failing. I remember when I was 16, I said to the people who were telling me about trickle-down economics, I was like, I didn't know anything about economics at the time. And I literally said to them, just because it's so obvious to me, wait a minute. So you're telling me all of these guys get a bunch of money, right? We give them all the money, right? And then that money trickles back down into the economy, right? Like, that's what's happening. It's going to trickle down back into the economy, right? And they were all like, yeah, that's right. They'll reinvest into their businesses, and they'll reinvest into all this kind of stuff. And I just looked at all these guys and I said, so hold on. If you already have all the money, and the purpose of investing money is to get more money, why would you invest more money if you already have all the money? And that's the end of the fucking conversation, isn't it? Right? They're not interested in investing money because they already have all the money. And so now it's just a series of wealth extraction strategies in order to extract the maximum amount of wealth out of the populace while they retreat to their gated communities and their pedophile sex islands. Like, that's what they're doing. What OSINT can already do with NLP, speech to text, facial recognition, objects tracking, everything, yeah. 2035, yeah, that timeline's believable too. And given how these things generally work, right? That things snowball in big significant ways, right? That one discovery creates a new discovery, creates a new discovery, creates a new discovery, right? And they just power forward in big ways. I could perceive even sooner than that, right? The power grid failure in Texas shows how weak America actually is. Exactly. I don't think they'll last as an empire past this century. And Branwyn, here's something insane to think about to tie into all that. Let's get on the map. One of the big reasons why the Kazakhs revolution happened was because oil prices or the price of electricity went through the roof, right? And a big reason why the price of electricity went through the roof is because China banned crypto, right? China bans crypto mining. So all the crypto miners go where? Kazakhstan. So what does that do? Jacks the price of electricity in Kazakhstan. Well, now Kazakhstan has fallen into revolution, right? The whole thing is disorganized and disorderly. No one knows really what's going on in Kazakhstan anymore. But the crypto miners certainly aren't operating, right? Because the Kazakhstan citizens know that crypto is bullshit. They understand that, so they chase these guys out. Where do you think they're going? They're being warmly welcomed into fucking Texas. The place that just had a power grid failure. That the governors of Texas and the rulers of Texas, the owners of Texas, are welcoming the crypto people. That they're trying to sell the Texans on the idea that crypto is going to solve so many problems for us. Right? So Texas is going to experience a spike of electricity prices as these psychotic billionaires do everything they can to use the power grid in order to create this fake money, this play money, so that they can trade sex slaves with each other. Like, the boyish derp circus, yeah. Like, it's pathetic. Like, it's pathetic is what it is. Like, America has become pathetic. It's not interested in anything except its worship of money. Like, and that's what it is. It's about worshiping money. Yeah, investing money might have unwanted results, like helping people. Yeah, exactly. Black Mirror by 2030, though. It's moving fast. Yeah, we'll see. Basic income, the year is 5,439 AD. Yeah. And, like, basic income stuff is coming, right? And it's coming because these guys are not going to have any other solution. They're not going to know what else to do at the end of the day, right? That as more and more people become homeless, there's already something like 600,000 homeless people in the United States. As revolutions begin to foment amongst the populace, as the populace take a look at things like this trucker protest, right? Like, this trucker protest was a resounding success. It was a major success. If your goal is to confront power, it's impossible to deny that this trucker protest was enormously successful, right? It galvanized the entire political structure. It forced major conversations in the society. The failings of the convoy was strictly that in my mind, was that they didn't have broadband appeal, right? That if they were doing what they were doing while also calling for a basic income or demanding the alleviation of poverty or saying something along those lines, people would have taken them much more seriously. But they were self-serving, so it didn't really manifest that way. But the tactics were successful. Like, look how scared Trudeau is. Look, Trudeau is terrified, right? He looks weak. Right? He looks very weak. Like, evoking the emergency acts in the midst of this, that's a very weak bitch move. Like, it's just so pathetic. But that's what we are now. Like, North America's a fucking joke. How is the U.S. taking so many L's despite having a military budget bigger than the next 9 countries combined? Because it doesn't matter. C.S. Lewis, in his wrote a series of books, and one of them was Mere Christianity. And in it, he made this argument where he said, if you make a critical error at the outset and then continue forward with that error in place, it doesn't matter how much effort or how much wealth or how many decisions you make to try to correct that error. All you can do is go back and rectify the error. And if it costs you to do it, then that's the price of making that mistake. And the Americans, and North America generally, has made a critical error. And that critical error is that you can organize a civilization without planning. Like, really think about how fucking stupid this is. Like, we can just let the free market decide. No, you can't. Like, no, you can't. The only people who think this way are children. Like literally, it's like an 11-year-old being like, everything will work out. No, it won't. No, it fucking won't. You need a plan. And the only people who actually believe this idea that the free market will decide and that'll benefit anybody are rubes. Right? Just gullible idiots. Even the people who are espousing this let the free market decide shit don't believe it. Right? And how do you know? Because every single time the free market decides and they get fucked, what happens? They run and get a fucking bailout. So they don't believe it. Like, This whole system is as fraudulent as it can be. And it really is like we're at the moment in a play where the person that's been grifting everybody and the audience sees them as the grifter, right? And there's always the one character who knows they're the grifter and is trying to convince everybody that they're the grifter. Well, it's like it's that moment where the grifter is revealed and everybody sees them as the grifter, right? Except now they've got all the power, and so it's like, what are we supposed to do, right? Like instead of and what happens in those plays and in those shows? Well, the people get together and they chase those people out of town. Well, time for us to step up. Yeah, the power grid's going to melt. Yeah, of course. And like, so America can't win because they've based their whole ideology on this failed premise that we can just move forward without planning. And when they do get together to plan, it isn't to do anything or construct anything or build a society. It's to conspire against the people in order to extract as much wealth as possible and then abandon them. Like, it's a society of grifters. Alberta conservatives being all chummy by encouraging crypto mining? Of course. Well, because these guys are getting a big cut. Like, what do you... Absolutely. Like, if somebody walked up to me, and if I was like the governor of Texas, and somebody said like, "Hey, can you encourage crypto mining? We'll give you like a million crypto or a million Bitcoin," right? I'm going, okay. It's not difficult to figure out. More than 235,000 people in Canada experience homelessness in any given year, and 25,000 to 35,000 people might be experiencing homelessness on any given night. Yeah. Like, that's a failed system. And what's embarrassing about this is that it's actually cheaper to alleviate that homelessness than it is to allow the homelessness to persist. Right? Like, food banks cost money. Shelters cost money. Emergency doctors cost money. Like, emergency police services cost money. All these things cost money. It's cheaper to just get these people a house than it is to keep them homeless. So what that means is that we live in a society that wants to pay more to keep people homeless, that is happy to keep people homeless. Brutal. Fucking brutal. Good opportunity for me to say, by the way, like, share, subscribe. If you are not a donator, please consider donating, right? I myself have no support systems any longer. My income is limited to the small amount of cafe work I can find to this channel. Thank you to the Patreons who are already donating. Thank you so much. I won't out who you are because I worry. And then any work I can get narrating, right? And that's yet to actually manifest anything. So I myself am quite concerned about experiencing homelessness in the near future. Among other things, what with the declaration of the Emergencies Act. So if you value the work that I'm doing at all, if you value what I'm doing here even a little bit, consider donating. Patreon's down below. And if you are donating at the dollar level, consider making it $2. Like, this is fucking serious shit we're going through, guys. Like, this is serious shit what's coming. Like, even without the declaration of emergency acts and the overt, like, fascist nature of what's coming our way, like, even if the wealthy class just extracted all the wealth and abandoned us, we would still be careening into total disaster, right? Then you add on the layer of just like, yeah, the police can just fucking kick in your door and get ready, emergency act. What are you going to do? They can just shut down your bank account. Emergency act. What are you going to do? Right? Brutal. Basic income, a ruling class con. Yeah, it's an attempt by some sections of the ruling class to placate enough of the ruling class into accepting it instead of revolution. I think that's true, Watson. I'm torn on the basic income question. I am actually torn on the basic income question because on the one hand, I do see it as, like, I see it as a legitimate emergency measure. That, like, it's all well and good to talk about revolution, but there are people who are in desperate straits. Like, there are people who are in a desperate situation. And I view something like a basic income as it's not like the final solution to end all be all. That I would argue that a big reason why they don't want to move forward with the basic income is because they are concerned that what they will end up doing is funding the revolutionaries, right? That people will be able to find their feet enough in order to recognize the large-scale grift that's being perpetrated against them, to have the moment to breathe to be able to do that. So they're not interested in it. Right, and they're certainly not interested in it from the perspective of, well, it empowers and emboldens the wage slaves, right? So you can't empower or embolden the wage slaves in any way that's meaningful whatsoever. So they don't want to do it. But I do think ultimately they will do it because they'll run out of options. There won't be anything left, and so they'll implement a basic income for exactly the reasons that you say. And this is more or less like, when leftists finally foment a strong enough revolutionary force, we saw this under FDR, right? The capitalists will do everything they can in order to discard the populace, right? The capitalists will do everything they can, in order to placate the populace. And they will give away everything except the means of production. And that's essentially what happened. I'm just putting this on someone. That's essentially what happens under FDR. Like when FDR is told what is what do you consider your greatest success? Like at the end of his presidencies, he said, "I saved capitalism, not I helped the working class, not I defeated the Nazis, not I built a strong, vibrant middle class, right? Not any of that, right? It was, I saved capitalism," right? And so the mistake that the communists and the socialists made under FDR was that they didn't kill capitalism then. They let it live. And the capitalists will do that again. They'll give the populace all the demands they want as long as they get to keep the means of production. And that's the one thing that we can't allow them to keep. Because if they keep the means of production, they'll foment another extinction event like they're doing right now. Yeah, I would not buy the crypto hype, but WEF has what I'd say is a favored crypto, and I bought that cheap as a Trojan horse, infiltrate the infiltrators. The goal of crypto, okay? The goal of crypto is for each and every one of these psychotic billionaires to have their own funny money, right? That when Amazon pays you, they're not going to pay you in American dollars. They're going to pay you in Bezos bucks, right? That Elon Musk is going to pay you in Musk dollars, right? So that you can't transfer it to a different company or anything. And in this way, they are going to completely destroy any semblance of a unified society or culture. This is obviously the goal of crypto, is to ensure that people like Bezos and Musk and Gates and all of this can literally buy wage slaves and keep them forever and ensure that they can't go anywhere. And ensure that the serfs can't actually save any money and move anywhere. And so that they can't actually go and work for any competitors or anything. And given the privatized models that are being erected in the United States, you are going to end up with entire towns that are just going to be like, you're going to grow up in a Bezos town, right? And Bezos is going to train you to be a good little Bezos worker. Your parents will be paid in Bezos bucks, right? Which you can only use at Bezos, at Amazon warehouses and all of this kind of stuff, right? And you will be trained to be a good little Bezos worker, right? That's what is coming. And that's what crypto is for. That's the purpose of cryptocurrency. And of course, cryptocurrencies are a complete climate change disaster. They're like Bitcoin alone, it requires the same amount of energy as the country of Ireland. Ethereum, which is what powers the NFT market, requires the same amount of power as Argentina. Like, get completely fucked. And it's all so that guys like Jeff Bezos can have their own little special currency that they can enslave their populaces with. Like, it's financial domination is what it is. It's the re-erection of company towns. And like the idea that that's not the point. What are you fucking joking? Of course it is. These guys are psychopaths. Like that's obviously their goal. Ugh, I hate it that it jumps down like that. Hey Lonnie, how you doing? Don't think I've seen you around in a while. Good to see you. Maybe you've been trolling. Or, not trolling, lurking. That's the word. They're just playing with war toys. They don't have to win. It's just whatever to them. Well, and like, look, here's an economy that makes sense if you're a psychopath, right? Have the public buy bombs, right, from your company, right? Like you own the bomb making company, so have the public buy bombs, drop those bombs wherever, right, on Somalia, let's say, and then have the public pay to reconstruct Somalia through your construction companies, right? And then have the public pay your companies for resource extraction from Somalia, right? Or Iraq or Afghanistan or any of these places, right? And then when they construct enough and when they build enough, have the public pay your companies to bomb them again. So bomb them, build, bomb, build, bomb, build. That's the American economy, right? And it's going to collapse because it's all based on the idea that the public is paying the taxes to be able to fund this shit. Well, and the public is running out of road. Like, the public already ran out of road, right? That's why we're in a credit crisis. Because for the public to actually have things like, shelter and food, instead of getting that through their wages, they're now taking on debt. And it's collapsing. Like, the whole thing is in free fall collapse. It mathematically fails. I'm with you. I prefer different solutions that cut out the oligarchs. Yeah, I mean, we should seize the means of production and arrest them and put them on trial for their many crimes. Like, the climate change crimes alone. Like, the disinformation campaigns. Like, the idea that the Koch brothers are just going to die of old age. Like, one of them already has. Well, and the other one literally admitted that what he did was wrong. Like, here's a guy that should go to the Hague. For sure. People like George W. Bush, people like Dick Cheney, like, these people are fucking Hitler level. Like, they literally murdered, like, 1 million Iraqis for fucking nothing. So that they could just implement this economy that I just talked about. Yeah, there is no free market. The government props up companies. Yeah, that's the nature of fascism, right? Like, Mussolini said that fascism is when the public sector and the private sector merge, right? And what are we seeing? Like, what are we seeing? There is also a large percentage of religious who don't believe in the justice you make here. Yeah. Well, yeah, like, nobody is more nihilistic than these Christians, right? That this life is meaningless, that it's the afterlife. Things will be better when we're dead. Like, that's modern Christianity. Like, modern Christianity is things will get better when we're dead. Like, you don't get more nihilist than this. The part that is frustrating the most is the people who refuse to look at the system and say, wait, we have a problem, and refuse to change anything, but only make things worse. I mean, and Eric, like you take a look at the PPC people, right? The PPC people, like, they know something's gone wrong, right? Which puts them head and shoulders ahead of every other political organization. But they deny the existence of systems, right? And if you deny the existence of systems while attempting to take those systems over, well, when you get into power, you can't help but destroy them, right? Like, that's the danger of the PPC. And you watch, the PPC are going to rise up pretty quickly because the psychopaths that own the country are going to look at them and be like, oh, these will be useful, right? Especially as Justin Trudeau and the NDP and the Conservatives lose public support, right? And as they stop responding rationally to the needs of the people. Because they're not rational. If UBI was the savior, people think it is why we are billionaires like Sir Richard Branson and one percenters like Andrew Yang talking about it so much. I mean, I think that they're touting it because I do think, and Andrew Yang is one of these guys, I do think there are people in the conversation who actually think, like, we need to avoid a civil war here, right? And they look at something like a basic income, and it's to them it's a very simple, easy, straightforward way to try to prevent this incoming civil war. But the power structure's incapable of doing even that. Yeah, Marx was right. The system creates its own gravediggers. Exactly. Like, capitalism will sell you the rope to hang it. Like, it just will. Because it has no moral ethos or survival mechanism. It literally is more money for me. That's it. That's as far as it goes. Homelessness supports high real estate prices. It's residual demand, kind of like unemployment insurance. Yeah. We're going to see Hoovervilles again. I mean, I don't think we are. Because anytime those sorts of structures start to get built up, the police just come through and break them down. Right? Like, you're talking about some kind of permanent structures. Well, the society has gone so psychotic. Like, a big reason why Hoovervilles were allowed to exist is because there was a great deal of sympathy in the public. Right? That the people who are experiencing homelessness, the people who are experiencing that kind of hardship were still viewed as human, right? Whereas our homeless are viewed as subhuman. They've been ejected from the society, and the best that they'll get is just get a job, right? That kind of thinking has become ubiquitous. And so the public are not going to allow Hoovervilles to appear. And when the police go through and knock down whatever structures they will, huge sections of the populace will be in support of it, right? Like, fascism is popular. Like, that's the thing that we need to really recognize right now. That the reason why so much fascist shit is happening in our society is because fascism is popular. People like it. People are in favor of it. They're looking forward to implementing fascist policies. Half the population is watching the Trudeau government implement the Emergency Measures Act, and they support it. Half of them. Like, fascism is popular. We like it. And so we're not going to get Hoovervilles because the half of the society that's in favor of fascism will gladly and gleefully celebrate the destruction of those places, which is sharply different than what was happening back when the Hoovervilles were erected, when those people were still viewed with a little bit of compassion, right? And you can listen to somebody like Noam Chomsky talk about this. That Noam Chomsky, who lives through the Great Depression, who lives through that period of time, he talks about how there was a general sense of hopefulness. That yes, there were problems, but the society generally looked at itself and said, we can overcome these problems. We can work through these problems. There are solutions to these problems. And we believe that the people in power are actually working to actually implement those solutions. Right? And none of that exists today. None of that exists today. There's nobody in power who actually cares about solving these problems, right? There's a couple of people who have run the grift of looking like they care about solving those problems, but they don't care, right? They care about their positions of power, and they understand that the way that they maintain their power is by being the Hulk Hogan, right? By being the good guy in the narrative, right? Which the power structure uses. The power structure is more than happy to put somebody like AOC or Bernie Sanders up as like the hero, so that people will funnel their energy towards them, and that will ultimately be funneled into the dead end, which is the Democratic Party, right? That's the point, and that's the goal of those sorts of people, right? Just like Obama, right? Obama was just like a death funnel who just took all of this leftist energy or progressive energy, hope and change and all of that, and just funneled it into a total dead end, which is the Democratic Party. Like, and the same thing is happening in Canada. Ugh, I hate it that it jumps down like that. It's so fucking annoying. The main argument for UBI is automation. If factories are automated, all the surplus value goes to the factory owner. And there are a lot of people unemployed. Idle people are a problem, yeah. That's the lesson of history of the New Deal, post-war social contract years. You cannot leave people in power who have the incentive and resources to undo everything that was accomplished. We're restarting company towns? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think crypto is not really about the company store. Cash allows people some form of economic sovereignty. if everything is digitized, that economic sovereignty is gone. Yeah, that's the point. Like, these corporate entities don't want you to have economic sovereignty. They don't want you to have freedom or any of that kind of stuff. They're not interested in any of that, right? Like, they will happily do away with the democratic system because the democratic system is the only system left that can confront them, right? They'll happily do away with it. And they'll happily do away with your economic sovereignty. They don't give a fuck. Canadians cutting down on meat, fruits, vegetables, or turning to cheap food due to price increases? Yeah, of course. Right? And that's only going to get worse as well. Right? The goal is extraction followed by abandonment. That's the goal. NFA, but with the connections with the stellar lumens, the WEF, IMF, others, it seems very tied in. Also, proof of stake so that one is not power. I think the positions in for post-USD collapse. That was just a whole bunch of stuff, dude. I don't really know what your point was on that. My apologies. But like, yeah, like what happens after the dollar collapse? Like the dollar collapse is coming. China has erected its own currency, and China is far more stable than the United States right now, in significant ways. Like, anytime I see any Westerner critiquing China, it's incoherent nonsense, right? They don't understand the structure of the Communist Party of China. They don't understand the structure of the National People's Congress. They think it's a free market capitalist system. And so I've had people in my chat, I've had people saying that like, oh, China's in a housing bubble and it's going to pop and it's going to cause problems. It's like, no, like it's going to cause problems for capitalists, right? But China doesn't give a fuck about those guys, right? That if the bubble pops and all the capitalists lose a whole bunch of money, the Chinese, like the National People's Congress is going to be like, yeah, you took the risk, get fucked. And that's going to be the end of that conversation. And China's going to nationalize a bunch of housing. They're going to make sure that, like, they have the structures. Like, I don't understand. Like we here in the West are so trained to believe that financial markets are actually economics, and they are not, right? Things are economics. That if all you do is take money and then transfer it to a different market and then transfer it to a different market and then transfer it to a different market and then transfer it back to your market and then you've made money because of the alchemy of all of that, well, that's worthless. Whereas if you take your money and invest it in a company that builds cups, and they do, then you have things, right? That's called the real fucking economy. And we have no conception of what that is here in North America. We believe that the parasite is the economy. We believe that the financialization of the economy is the economy. We believe that the speculators and the investors and the stock market and all this shit is actually an economy. When it isn't. When it fucking isn't. People are the economy, right? People need food. People need shelter. People need clothes. People want luxury goods. That's the economy. Is our economy providing those things? Fuck no. Fuck no. Wait, what did the Koch brother admit that he was wrong about? He funded disinformation campaigns on climate change, and he admitted it was wrong to do that. Which is why he should go to the Hague. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism, as it is the merger of state and corporate power. Yep, Mussolini. The PPC people realize something is wrong. Their answer is to double down on the very thing that's creating the problem. Exactly. And their denial of systems is very shocking, right? That's the thing that I think is the most shocking about them. Like, it's understandable that they wouldn't have, like, they don't have a critical analysis of their society. They're not Marxists. Like, they're not communists, right? They don't really understand how their society is structured. But it's one thing to not really understand how the society is structured, and it's another to completely deny that there are systems whatsoever. Like, that's where they become terrifying, in my view. Well, that and their overt white supremacy. But that white supremacy, I think, comes from their denial of systems. Like, they don't know what systemic racism is. They don't know, and they deny the existence of systemic racism. They deny these things. And it's like, if you don't think a car needs maintenance because you don't think there's an engine underneath the hood, then you can do what you want with it. And when it blows up, you'll just be like, what? Like your vehicle is going to blow up if you think that way. You'll never put oil in it. You'll never bring it in for checkups. Like the check engine light will come on and you'll just be like, well, that happens, I guess. I'll tell you what, fascism, I was really curious about the anti and saw the target and I thought, wait, those aren't the fascists. The fascists are the RNC, DNC as a whole. Yeah, learn to code. Remember that learn to code shit? Like, that was a brutal fucking moment, the learn to code shit. Even like far right people were like, don't say that shit. Like, don't fucking say that. That's fucking brutal. Yeah, we won't get Hoovervilles. We'll get forced labor camps. Yeah, and they'll be called. They won't be called forced labor camps. They'll be called ready to work camps, or not even camps, like ready to work centers, right? Like that's what they'll be called. Salton Sea. The problem with supporting white supremacist fascists is that eventually the mob will turn on you. Yeah, like that's what they're really experiencing in Ukraine right now. Like we think that we can fund neo-Nazis and control them. And we fucking can't. Like, and Ukraine is going like full blown neo-Nazi, right? Like, what do you think is going to happen here, guys? Like, what do you fucking think is going to happen here? You think these neo-Nazis are just going to kowtow to the American empire? No, they're fucking Nazis. Work will set you free, camp. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, where cash is speech, CBDCs are a ball gag. Ah, yes, assets, not paper money, you hoarder. Yeah, fucking brutal. No, populism isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's the reason why they need to demonize it and pretend like people like Doug Ford, like calling Doug Ford a populist is a fucking joke. Like Doug Ford's a member of the WEF. Like he's not populist at all. It's just a total grift, right? He's walking around saying for the people, and people are like eating it up. Like, yeah, he really cares about the people. Isn't denial of systems the total nihilism, infantilism of the right-wing libertarianism? Yeah, I mean, I don't know about nihilism, but it definitely is infantilism. Like, it's childish. Like the denial of, let's use a real easy one, right? Systemic racism. It's not a difficult subject to understand. Like, it truly isn't. That a group of individuals went into Parliament and put in a piece of legislation that was racist. You can see one very clearly, the Indian Act, right? And then those individuals died and another group of individuals moved in, didn't repeal the legislation, and now operate underneath it. That's systemic racism. Very obvious. There are other examples, right? Redlining, for example. Jim Crow laws, for example, right? Like, these are examples of systemic racism. And it's easy to understand, right? But they refuse to. And at this point, you do have to call it a refusal. Like, and we're talking about people like Jordan Peterson, for example. Like this incoherent nut job who's walking around downplaying climate change and pretending like systemic racism doesn't exist. Going like this, saying racism in interviews and shit. Like, and people listen to this guy. Yeah, the free market is a living, breathing entity. Yeah, I mean, what are they describing? They're describing a god, right? Because that's who they worship, right? And as we retreat into tribalism, and as we retreat into like what Carl Sagan predicted, right? As we retreat into this kind of clueless spiritualism, right? And obviously there's a hunger for spiritualism. Stuff like the free market, like they are turning it into a god. It's very obvious, right? Like they worship it. They describe it as a living, breathing entity, right? They think it's alive, right? And they also think that it's responsible for all the decisions that get made. Well, what the fuck are they talking about? They're talking about a god. Like, I am not calling this a death cult flippantly. I'm not trying to exclusively insult them, right? I think that it is an accurate statement I say that it is a capitalist death cult because it is accurate to call it such. And to call it anything else at this point is just hysteria. Like, they believe in an ideology that has already failed. And they do so while promoting the idea that their free market is a god and that money is a god. Like, this is worship, what we're looking at. This is worship. Well, the basis of all right-wing thought is based in fear and a submission to authority complex dressed up as a positive character trait. I mean, yeah, there is this aspect of it. I mean, there's a reason why the left-wing solution, which of course the fascists decry, is that you have to remove right-wing like capitalists from your structure of power, that they're literally not even permitted to speak because their idea is complete destruction. Hey, Onward, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Oh, Onward, man. I feel like you're probably my oldest person who keeps coming back around. I've been thinking about this recently. Like, there are people who used to come in who don't come in anymore. I think it might be you and Barnabas. Maybe you, Oddity. I see people like Lonnie. Lonnie, you're around too. And I'm going to pause right now and just say, man, like, I'm so thankful that you guys are around, man. Like, this whole period of time has been just absolute fucking insanity. It's been absolute, just crazed insanity. So old. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Onward. I'm saying that you're an ancient. Your spirit has always been with us. Oh, Mock, to you too, bud. How'd I forget you, bud? You've been here since, like, day fucking one, bud. Yeah, dude. Mocked always coming in with it, keeping me honest. Keeping me honest. That's what Mocked is here for, man. Jordan Peterson is a perfect example of why absolute free speech is dangerous. I've seen a person going from being rational thinking person to a radical reactionary when she started to listen to people like JP, PragerU, and other far-right podcasts. Well, I mean, like, now she's calling her New Zealand government a neo-Marxist government who's planning to implement communism, and people like Justin Trudeau are communists. How embarrassing, right? Like, that's what I say to these guys. Like, wow, so you've just given up on being intellectually credible. Like, it's embarrassing to call Justin Trudeau a communist. Like, what a fucking embarrassing thing to say. Like yikes. Like, history is going to look very poorly on you for saying that Justin Trudeau is a communist. Like, what the fuck? Like, not only are you admitting that you don't know what communism is, you're miscategorizing. Like, Justin Trudeau is a pretty overt, obvious neoliberal, right? Like, leaning towards, now with this Emergency Act, like, leaning towards fascist. Like, he's in no way is he a communist. I've only been here about 8 months or so. I mean, that's about as long as I've been doing this, Mocked. Submission to the authority of the market, submission to the authority of God, submission to the authority structure of the state, the coalition of the right wing, yeah, all that kind of shit. And as long as they can extract as much wealth as possible and then abandon the populace, right, the non-believers, right, they're happy. Like, yeah, exactly. Communist is someone who gleefully signs multilateral free trade deals. Well, I mean, like, if communism has any definition whatsoever, right? If communism and socialism has anything in it that can be looked at and as a goal, it is the material improvement of the lives of the citizens. Like, and anything else is just propaganda. Like, when the Soviet Union existed, it improved the quality of life and the material conditions of its citizens. To deny that is to live in hysteria. When the Communist Party of China took over China, they improved the material conditions of China. To deny that is to live in hysteria, right? And the idea, like, what material conditions has Justin Trudeau improved for anybody? I remember finding you originally when you were doing your walk around at night. Yeah, Amazing. I haven't done a night walk around in a long time. I prefer to do them during the day. Hey Adam, how you doing, bud? Late, sorry if it's been mentioned. Mark Lenegna died. I thought you have a baritone voice, and since you like Cornell, you might like him. I recommend One Way Street, One Take Section on YouTube. I actually don't know who this Mark Lenegna is, Adam. I'm gonna. Anytime anybody recommends anything to me, I like to take it a bit seriously. Yeah, okay, that's probably who you're talking about. Lead singer. Oh yeah, okay. All right. All right. Another one bites the dust. I contend that Justin Trudeau is Mick Jagger's son. Holy shit, bro. I think you're right. Justin Trudeau. Mick Jagger is Justin Trudeau's son. Holy fuck. Oh, QAnon mom. I'm so sorry, Branlin. Like really. QAnon's a tough one, man. Like, QAnon's a real tough one. I actually have a lot of sympathy for those guys. Like, I did a pretty deep dive on the QAnon stuff in the early days, and like, it really, like, once you go Q, like, it's real hard to turn around. It's real hard to turn around. I'm gonna take a quick break, guys. Please enjoy the China walk. I'll be back 2 minutes. Why not just fall down a pit of fantasy? This reality is awful, feels tissue thin already. Exactly, dude. That's exactly what's going on with the Q stuff, if you ask me. Well, and also, like, if you watch a highly recommended documentary called Q Into the Storm, easy recommend. It becomes really obvious really quickly that the people who are fairly central, not to the organization, like the person who is Q isn't like this, but the people who are like pretty deep in that organization, and I'm really trying to say this without being dismissive or insulting, they're simple folk. I think that's really the best way that I can say it. That these are people who are not only uneducated, but even, I think, if they even tried to pursue education, it wouldn't be successful. Like, and again, I'm saying that without trying to insult them or belittle them or go after them or dismiss them. Right? There are people in the world who are like this. Like, it's what is real. And it's why it's what we have done as a society and as a civilization is fundamentally dangerous. Because there are people who will not know what's going on, and they just won't. And if you abandon those types of people and convince them that the society is betraying them and it's abandoning them, well, in their pursuit to try to discover why that's the case. Have a good one, Nova Scotia, bud. Always good to see you, man. Why, in their pursuit to try to discover what's actually going on, well, they can stumble upon complete and total grifters, right? Like, bit of a spoiler alert, but like, when you find out who Q is, right? Like, it's shock. Like, the narrative is as shocking as it can be. Like, it's It's literally just like a dude who decided to do this. And that's it. And like a supervillain almost. Like he has no motivation outside of I wanted to. Like it's like trolling on the highest level possible. And the people who fell for it are the most vulnerable people in the society. Like and it's heartbreaking to me. It's truly heartbreaking. And how easily these people were able to come under the umbrella of this queue, and how easily these people were able to be co-opted by the Trump administration. It was so easy. Yeah, it makes all this awful stuff coherent. They think they'll see it all put right again. And the most heartbreaking part about this Onward is that they funneled all of their energy into a belief that Donald Trump was going to go in and drain the swamp without recognizing at all that, and how could they, that Donald Trump is part of it. Like, Donald Trump's not a political outsider. What the fuck are you talking about? Donald Trump's not a political outsider. Donald Trump has been part of the political structure since he was born. Conservatives are in a crisis cult because they know they can't win elections fairly anymore, but they're just like a little wing of the overall collective cult, right? Like that all politics in North America, and I'm going to say this until I'm fucking blue in the face, until it finally starts coming back around on me, right? All politics, 100% of politics that exist in electoral systems in North America is vanity projects. Exclusively. No one is there to improve the material conditions of the populace. No one is there and is interested in resolving problems or solutions. Everyone who is running for office, who is getting into power, who has power currently, is there exclusively so that they can say, "Oh, I'm the governor of such and such. Oh, I'm the president of the United States. Oh, I'm Congressman person this." And that's it. They are not there to move forward on an objective, to galvanize public support to do something, to do any of that. That might be the rhetoric they use, but that is only to galvanize the votes they need in order to fulfill the vanity project, which is to attain the position they are running for. And that's across the board. And what happens when they actually get into power? They just let the corporations do whatever. Yeah. Hey, this corporation wants you to vote this way on this bill. Okay. And maybe they'll cry like AOC did that one time. Right? But they'll still vote. Right? They'll still do their job. Right? Which is to let these corporations do whatever they want. Right? And when you exist in a society where all these politicians just say, whatever, corporations, do what you want. Okay, rich people, you do what you want. Well, then all politics becomes vanity projects. Like someone like Jagmeet Singh, for example. Like Jagmeet Singh isn't interested in improving the material conditions of anybody, right? He exists to control dissent, and he just wants to be the leader of the NDP. If he becomes the prime minister, I'm sure he'd be happy about it. But really, I think he's just happy being the leader of the NDP. A flip side to folks calling Trudeau et al. Commies is if actual far-left politicians break through and they get called commies by opponents, it may not stick, as it's been used too much before. High hopes? Yeah, we'll see about that. They'll probably call the communists fascists, is what they'll do, right? Because the new narrative is that communists and fascists are the same thing. I heard Q was a guy named Jim Watkins. He lives in Thailand because he's everything Q is trying to root out. That's supposed to be a wink like this. Yeah, I mean, you're basically giving the game away there, Watson, but that's fine. I still recommend Q Into the Storm. It's still a good watch. All right. got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm old? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to Eden. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun don't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to Eden. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to Eden. Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to Eden. Antarctica is covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in ice. And I still believe that we can do it. In our arrogance and our stupidity and our hubris, we have come to believe that we are the most powerful thing on this planet, and it simply isn't so. We don't need to make something. We don't need to do something. We don't need to create a new way of living. We don't need to do any of that. The earth created a garden for us. This place was a garden before we were even here. The earth is more than capable of healing itself. That we have pit ourselves against the most powerful forces on the planet while believing that it's us and we are wrong. And if we want to be here to witness the absolute miracle of the earth healing itself, then all we have to do is stop. Stop the polluting. Stop the warring. Stop shitting everywhere we go. And when the earth heals itself, perhaps then we will realize we were nothing more than a squalling child, pointlessly papping at the face of the person who loves us the most. The earth wants us to be here. But if we keep acting this way, it will tell us that thing that we have heard from mothers through time. I brought you into this world and I can bring you out. And all we have to do to stop it is stop. So fucking easy. The consequences of stopping will be so much easier to deal with than the consequences of continuing on. And we're too fucking stupid to do it. I was called a Marxo-fascist by one of the PPC rebel media degenerates online recently. Yeah, like they don't know. Like their illiteracy is like right in front of their faces. Yes, the people who fought against Nazis are the same as the people who are Nazis, right? They're the same, right? Like, that's why in Europe there are active communist parties, right? There are active people, like... I have two questions in regard to China. Do you know what China is doing to tackle the issue of water pollution in their country? Because I know they have one of the highest levels in the world. Secondly, in regards to the one-child policy that was recently been abolished, do you agree with their policies for implementing in the first place? And am I correct that the reason they implemented the child policies in the first place was to try to reduce their population? So I don't know much about what they're doing in terms of water pollution specifically. China is attempting, like, it's spiked up its pollution fairly heavily over the last decade because of its trade deals and because of its policies in regards to America. It is the front runner in terms of solar power. It is the front runner in terms of nuclear power. It is the front runner in terms of alternative non-fossil fuel based energies. Like year over year, China is producing more electric cars than America has. Like, they're doing everything they can to try to... So I wouldn't be too surprised if they're doing the same kind of stuff with water pollution. Like, China is in the unfortunate position where it is simultaneously attempting to industrialize itself, become an advanced economy, while simultaneously dealing with climate change, of which it is going to be one of the major victims of. Like, when the sea levels rise, major cities are going to be underwater in China. This region here, right? The Guangzhou region, this is a valley, right? You see how it's got a river system and all this kind of stuff? If the sea levels go up 1 meter, this city is underwater. And there are lots of cities all along the way, right? That's why they're building major cities inland, right? Vice did a documentary over a decade ago now, talking about these empty cities, right? And Vice, of course, when they talk about other nations, it's with this like head scratching stupidity because they're all they are xenophobes, and like the reason why they're building those cities is because they need places for people to go when it's time to leave, which is coming. And China is going to be affected more dramatically by climate change, likely than any other country. So they're highly incentivized to turn away. They're highly incentivized to do something about it. They know it's coming. They know it's serious, right? In the last hour, there's a video going around of Russia shelling a power plant in Luhansk. Yeah. That's war, dude. That's war, baby. Like, that's how it works. Like, there's no fucking around. Like, we don't know what the story is. Like, is that power plant been taken over by Nazis? Like, we don't know. Like, and nor are we going to know. Like, our media is not going to tell us this. And then you had a second thing on this. The one-child policy, I was always against the one-China policy because it was something of a misunderstanding of how, like, the Chinese were operating from the assumption that people were going to continue having lots and lots of children as the country industrialized. But as we see throughout the development of our own country, is that as countries industrialize, they actually have less children. And that having lots of children is a survival strategy, right? That it used to be that a mother would have 5 children and 3 of them would die, right? That's how it would go. And you have like 2 survivors, and so the species would stabilize itself. And that's the reason you end up with this big boom, right? Because our medical abilities improved to such a dramatic level that now, instead of it being, you have 5 kids and 2 or 3 of them die, now you have 5 kids and 5 of them survive. So you end up with a gigantic generational boom. And then subsequent generations don't have as many children because they don't have to. Because you're going to have a kid and it's going to survive, and that's the expectation. And then you end up with a society that's like, oh, well, if I don't need to have like all these children in order to have like a survival kind of a thing, well, maybe I can have a career. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do that. Maybe there are other ways to exist in this society, right? Like, the advent of penicillin is this enormous shift in how societies worked and viewed themselves. And China attempted to confront this directly. The one-child policy, I think, backfired on them because it created an imbalance, right? It's like a 70-30 split. Like 70% of the society is male and 30% of the society is female. And that imbalance is starting to come back down, right? Like, it's starting to even itself back out, as it will. But do I hold it against them for trying? Not really. Like, I think that they took a look at the issue of overpopulation, made some decisions, and I think what's important, and what I'll always say, right, is that a society that makes a mistake collectively is better off than one that doesn't make a plan at all, right? That it is better to make a plan, be incorrect together, than it is to have no plan whatsoever. And I think that's what we're seeing with the China the one-child policy. And I think it's completely correct to critique the one-child policy because the Chinese people themselves critique it, right? I always get a little cringy when it comes to critiquing China, or when especially Westerners critique China, because it's like, what do we know? We don't know fucking anything about China. We know barely anything about fucking China, right? Like, Westerners often take to critiquing China as if it's like a backseat quarterbacking sort of situation when we don't know anything about them. And I generally defer to what the people of China think. And the people of China, more or less, like, they went along with the one-child policy, but then societal pressure gave way, and most people now see that the one-child policy didn't work, that it was a mistake, and it's better to move forward without such things. And that's the people themselves. And societies can make mistakes, right? Was it like world ending? Did it like end the whole fucking project? No. Read previous comment. Communism original meaning: a stateless, moneyless, classless society. 20th century meaning: a totalitarian state. Yeah. 21st century meaning: anything to the left of Ronald Reagan. Yeah, exactly, dude. Like, people don't know what this is. Like, people don't know what and like the and also, like, Western capitalists, like, don't want to acknowledge that, like, you can't just like flick a switch and make it happen. That it has to be transitory. Right? You've got to look at a goal, you've got to plan for it, you've got to move in that direction as a people together, right? You can't just like expect it to manifest because you say so. Like, but this ties into what I was saying before with the armchair quarterbacking, right? That, oh, certainly the people who we should take the most seriously are the most illiterate people who have failed to foment a revolution in their own country. Yeah, those are the people who know the most about communism, right? Not the people who are doing it. Not the people who successfully enacted a revolution and have a actual body in place that calls itself communist, that is working to move towards communism. Certainly those people we don't need to pay any attention to or respect their opinions or have anything. Definitely the people we should be paying attention to the most are white Westerners who have never even attempted to foment a revolution in their country. Those are the people who know the most about what communism is, right? Yep. Did anyone see what happened to the air in Los Angeles during the first lockdown in April 2020? Within a week of no traffic, you could see the entire skyline with no smog. Yeah. Like, in terms of the climate change conversation, it was a major decline in our emissions. Right? We're more than capable of doing it. Like, we're more than capable of doing it. We just have to stop acting like assholes. So we're doomed. Because that's what we are. And when you bring that up, the right wing can't even comprehend that is the definition of communism. Yeah, I mean, like, or that there is a procedure to get to it. Like, everybody thinks, like, oh, you want to put in communism and, like, strip money. And it's like, no, dude. Like, no communist actually talks this way. Like, there's, like, a real childish... And this is what is indicative of our society. Like, when it comes to the conversation of communism, we're caught in reefer madness. Right? Like... This is why, like, communists, especially Chinese communists who I've talked to about Richard Wolff, they view Richard Wolff as being very tepid, right? And they see him as being very weak as a communist leader in North America, which makes sense because Richard Wolff is operating in a society that is undergoing a type of madness, a reefer madness when it comes to the subject of communism. Where if you say the word communist, people just shut down. They just, oh, that's of the devil, and oh my God, and there's 100 million people. And they just lose their minds completely. They're incapable of having a rational discussion about it. Just like people were during the period of reefer madness, when we banned a plant while smoking another plant, right? And so Richard Wolff has had to operate within that auspice and operate very delicately because he knows that if he starts throwing around the language that like a Chinese communist person would, that he would just get rejected from the conversation completely because the reefer madness takes hold. And that's what's happening. It's like a mental illness, right? Like reefer madness was, like the Salem witch trials were, like it's the same. You say the word communism and people just like immediately their ability to think and be rational and have rational conversations is just it's out of the conversation completely. And where this is the most indicative is when you get into a conversation with somebody who's pretending to be rational, right? What do? They'll start to hit communism with all the atrocities, right? We go, oh, but communism did all these atrocities. And you know that these people are stupid and illiterate because they're trying to peg communism as an atrocity generator when their own system has been nothing but a total atrocity, a monstrous, barbarous atrocity, right? From the outset, right? Only someone who is in a position of total reefer madness would even think to bring up this idea of communism is atrocity generator. Like literally, capitalism begins by forcing serfs off of their land into factories, forcing the men into conscription onto boats after they clear cut their society, and then go enslave the black population, right? And then commit a genocide against the First Nations people. And then in the effort of actually attempting to cleanse itself from chattel slavery that it created, it needs to fight a war with itself that destroys the nation, right? Not to mention World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, the Afghanistan War, the Iraq War, right? Like over and over and over again. Capitalism cannot stop warring. It cannot stop the atrocities. Oh yeah, and I forgot the nuclear bombardment of Japan. The only ideology, the only nation to actually use nuclear bombs against a civilian target is capitalism. And this is how you know that a persistent, consistent reefer madness has taken over the society. Because even in the highest levels, I've seen Richard Wolff in conversation with Harvard professors, and they bring this shit up. That's how you know it's a reefer madness. That they're incapable of understanding the basics of the subject because they're so willing to embarrass themselves like this. Like, and Richard Wolff is very polite to these people when they do it. I will never be. I will say to them, like, you've just embarrassed yourself on like a really high level. Like, it's an embarrassment what you're doing. You're trying to say that communism has committed atrocities? This is what capitalism has done. How dare you even bring the subject up? How dare you embarrass yourself in front of me like this? Like, get the fuck out of here. Take your reefer madness and go. Like, it's so stupid. And you have to be stupid. Like, that's the point. You have to be stupid to think that way. Because when you're in a reefer madness level, you're not capable of being intellectual. You're not capable of thinking. Like, you're literally just living in your nuts. And you've gotten no farther. Eric McRae, thanks. The communist definition, yeah. Americans should take Jordan Peterson's advice, clean their own room before they criticize China. Yeah, there you go. This is a smart way of doing things, right? Like, turn it back around on them. Like, why are they even talking about China? Clean your own room up. Can't criticize the world until you clean up your room, bucko. As a doomer, I receive a lot of criticism for claiming there's a population problem. The only answer I could give to population concerns is 100% availability to reproductive rights, women's empowerment. I don't think there's a population problem. I just don't. That as societies have industrialized and as they have moved into other modes, higher education, all of this, the average birth rate is like 2.2, right? So like essentially replacement level. And the people who are studying it, and I mean, those are the people who you should be listening to, right? The people who are actually studying it, the people who have dedicated their lives to it, they are more or less of the opinion that the world population is going to get up to about 11, maybe 12, perhaps 13 billion, and then plateau. And then there's credible arguments to be seen that it will actually start to decline. Because here in North America, we're already in a population decline. For obvious reasons, right? Like, we've abandoned the populace. So, of course, we're in a population decline. Nobody can afford to have children. And so, I don't think that we are in a population crisis. Like, maybe there are localized population concerns, and I could see how a place like China, right, would have localized population concerns. It's got 1.6 billion people in like in an area that is about the size of Canada, right? Maybe even smaller, right? Like, you've got localized population concerns for sure, but overall, we haven't overwhelmed the system yet, and moreover, it doesn't look like we're going to in terms of population, right? That the concern right now is essentially waste, in my view. That what we are doing, more or less, in the world is fundamentally wasteful. Like, we are erecting systems like war, first of all. Like, the wars we are doing are fundamentally wasteful. That by definition they're wasteful. Like, they achieve nothing, they do nothing important. All they do is blow places up, destroy places, right? So they're even worse than waste. They're like a negative drain, right? Not even to mention the climate change shit. And then you tie in things like crypto. This is why I say we need to stop. Like, humanity needs to go sit in the corner for a while and think about what it's done. Like, really. Very, very seriously. And if we don't do it to ourselves, the world will. Like, what do you think COVID was? Right? Like, literally, we're walking around saying we've manifested our destiny. We're the greatest people in the world, right? We're the most powerful. This is the end of history. That's how fucking arrogant we are. Walking around saying this is the end of history and all this kind of garbage, right? And the world goes, oh yeah, okay. How about the flu +1, right? And it destroyed us. It fucking destroyed us, right? And that's literally the earth just going like nothing. Unleashing a breath that is so quiet that you can't even hear it if you try. And it leveled us, destroyed our economies, destroyed us completely, and showed that, yeah, we're more than capable of reducing pollution if we want to, right? And if we keep acting this way, well, it's just going to keep leveling it up, right? It's going to be the flu +2, flu +3, flu +4, not to mention all the climate change shit, right? We already lost the town of Lytton, right? Like, it already burnt down Lytton, right? What's next, right? I can never fucking find Lytton whenever I want to. Right? Already burnt down Lytton. So what's next? Right? Boston Bar, right? Logan Lake, Lower Nicola, like all of these places around here. All this is going to go. I think people will actually start sitting up and paying attention when Kamloops goes. Kamloops is about a population of 100,000. When Kamloops goes up, right? When Lytton burnt down, it burned down so fast that they couldn't even get the fire trucks out of the fire hall. This absurdist liberal idea that we're going to fall back on our technology and we'll just get air conditioners. Your walls are going to melt around you. The air conditioners will explode in front of your face. You will run to your water taps and to try to get cooled water, and it will come out boiling. It will be inescapable. You will die of heat. The fire will sweep through faster than your feet can carry you. Make no mistake about it. You cannot negotiate with the sun. Maybe we'll start to put two and two together when Kamloops goes. And it is going to go. Like, if I was living in Kamloops, I'd be moving. Because Lytton burnt down. What's next? You're gonna see Ashcroft go, Boston Bar, right? Darcy, like all these places. They're just gonna go up, right? And that's not even including the fucking flooding, right? Like the flooding that overtook Vancouver, which they still haven't fucking recovered from, by the way. We just stopped talking about it. Like, And meanwhile, we're talking about this kind of like lobster hierarchy, like this kind of dumb bullshit. Yeah, you don't get taught about capitalism atrocities in schools, yeah? It's a holdover from the Cold War, John Birch Society hysteria, and Richard Wolff is pretty tepid. A Marxist advocated for mutualist evolutionary socialism. No, yeah, but I think he has to be. Like, I think he has figured out a way to communicate these ideas without being chased out of the conversation due to this reefer madness thing. Like, that's what it is. That if the society would accept him talking more hardline ways, he probably would. But it won't. And he's likely experienced it firsthand. Right? Like, it's a mental illness that we're confronting. Like, and that's the way to think about it. Like these people that are saying like Marxo-fascism and all this kind of stuff, like it's a fucking mental illness. It's like you're talking to people during the Salem witch trials who are hunting young women because they think they have magical powers. Like that's what we're talking about here. Yeah, you got to tone it down a little bit if you want to say, whoa, maybe there aren't witches, right? And if you're not careful, then they're going to say, maybe you're the witch. Right? Even if you bring concept like livable wage is considered a radical Marxist idea, I know, right? Like, when did working a full-time job should pay food and rent become a radical leftist Marxist idea? If you bring the concept that workers should have more power in the workplace, you're somehow against freedom. I know, right? Like, we should have more freedom. You're against freedom. Like, When I say we're dealing with a mental illness, I'm quite serious about it. Like, we are dealing with a reefer madness hysteria that has been brought on by a mass propaganda network, right? That, like, propaganda is effective. It's why they use it. And it's like hypnotism, right? It's rotted these people's brains. And you can see it in real time. Like if you know somebody who watches Fox News, and I've talked to people whose parents were watching Fox News, and then they got them off of it, and they just turned it off, and suddenly they became like normal fucking people again, right? There is something about this that is fucking with people in major ways. Perhaps one of the serious issues of the dead-end nature, an antiquated nation-state system coming up against a global system of production. I mean, there are feudal systems in place that are not, and like you're not wrong to point out, Watson, that like the American Constitution was erected by slavers, like literally people who owned slaves, like and it's written in the Constitution that power should be maintained within the wealth of the nation. Right? So it's an antiquated document that no longer functions. Right? Although I should be more correct. It's functioning exactly how it should. Right? Which is that it's keeping power in the wealth of the nation. And we're seeing the negative outcomes of that. Because like the people who wrote this document didn't have nuclear bombs. Right? Nazis say better dead than red, then complain when we put them against the wall on the wrong side of 6 barrels. Yeah. Right? Like better dead than red. Okay. Right? That's fine. Like we'll oblige you that. My buddy said communism is good in theory, but has never been successfully implemented. China's doing pretty good. He went full Tiananmen. Yeah. Whenever you ask these people about the Tiananmen Square massacre, they don't know anything. Right? They don't actually know what happened in the Tiananmen Square massacre. All they literally know is like man stand in front of tank. That's it. They have no comprehension that like it was a color revolution. The CIA was backing students who literally murdered Chinese people in the streets, and that the military was brought in to deal with this like violent color revolution. Right? Like that's what happened in the Tiananmen Square. I asked him if he learned that from the same people who said the natives are lazy drunks. He's indigenous. The jury is out now. Yeah, I mean, like, I keep asking these people, like, how much do you trust your media? Scale from 1 to 10. And I've never had anybody go higher than 5. Right? And I always say, okay, so that's how much you trust your media. Except when it comes to China, then it's 100%, right? Like, Propaganda works. It completely works. Because propaganda is what people use in the place of knowledge, right? That if you have a vacuum, right? If there's a gap in your knowledge, which that's all over the place, right? Everybody has a gap in their knowledge. No hate on that, right? Everybody's going to have something that they don't know. Well, if a propagandist has bombarded you with this talking point over and over again, that's what you're going to use in to fill that vacuum, right? So propaganda is what we use instead of knowledge. Yet capitalist atrocities are just seen as inevitable forces of nature because supposedly there's not a central plan behind it. Although it's just hidden in plain sight, yeah. David Suzuki, I once asked renowned ecologist E.O. Wilson, who died on December 26, how many people the planet could sustain indefinitely. He responded, if you want to live like North Americans, 200 million, yeah. And I mean, like, communism is good in theory, you know, the Soviet Union just defeated the Nazis. Like, I mean, I don't know what these people need. Like, I don't know what they need. I mean, they need to purge their consciousnesses is what they need. So how are we going to get away from living like North Americans? Ain't going to happen. We're out of time. Like, stop driving your stupid cars. Like, turn your fucking cars off. Like, there's all kinds of things that we could do. We just don't want to. Because we're too childish. When I start thinking about cryptos and NFT, it starts getting pretty dark. Yeah, like, nothing is stupider than this. Like, literally, let's destroy the planet to create fake money and pretty pictures. How about Vancouver itself? Because Vancouver is on the ocean, it's actually protected from the higher heats. That the higher heats happen inland, right? So Vancouver itself is not going to burn down. There's too much. Like the weather systems make it so that that's not going to be the case. But the weather systems over here, I know it seems like it's not that far, but it is. That's why I keep talking about Kamloops, because Kamloops is right in the path. Like, it's right in the path. Yeah, if your house burns down, you should have worked harder. Yeah. People who watch Fox News think they are woke and intelligent. They think they're the underdog. Well, and I mean, guys like Tucker Carlson are doing a pretty good job of turning the narrative, right? That Tucker Carlson exists as controlled dissent. That he says the truth probably about 50% of the time. And given that Fox News viewers are used to only hearing the truth about 10% of the time, that's a big improvement for them, right? And I mean, fucking Tucker Carlson's like an absolute goddamn neo-Nazi. Like, brutal. Oh yeah, I wanted to share this. In a shock move, Juan Guaido has declared himself president of the breakaway republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. I think it's great that this guy's become like the meme of this. Oh yeah, right-wing victim culture is a real thing. Well, because they are victims. Like, that's the thing that kills me the most about this. Like, there are lots of people on the right who have been victimized. For sure. For sure. Like, the Clinton administration literally abandoned their children. The welfare system was dismantled under Clinton. Right? And then they thought that these people were going to turn around and vote for fucking his wife. Like, yeah, no, absolutely not. And like, the issue that I see on the right wing, which is the same as the liberal issue, is that they actually think there's a difference. They think that voting for Republicans is somehow going to be different than voting for Democrats. And it's not. And it's never going to be, right? The system has been taken over. It no longer responds to the needs of the populace. And like, these right-wingers are victims. A lot of them are, right? And you know, it doesn't take a genius to figure out. Like, you can go down to, you can just walk into Kentucky, right? Like, you'll see it. These people have been destroyed. Like, the poverty is real. The destruction is for real. Yeah, and that's a part of it too, Ligondis, for sure. They fantasize about lynching people like me. Absolutely, dude. Yeah, and that adds a fun little wrinkle into the conversation, doesn't it? But the reality is, like, this racism that you're talking about, right, is deeply entrenched in their material destruction. That their material conditions foment this kind of angry rage. And they've been duped into believing that the problems in their lives have to do with poor people of color than literally billionaires. Like, Trudeau promises that Canada will only be under the Emergencies Act for as long as trucks exist. All right, guys. We're at the end of this one. Yeah. The U.S. gives single poor mothers food stamps to embarrass them when they go to the store. Yeah. There is going to be a turning point. Right? Like, one of the classic conservative things that always occurs is, like, when it's happening to someone else, right? It's their issue. They just need to bootstrap themselves. But when it happens to a conservative, suddenly it's everybody's problem. Right? And the amount of poverty that's coming, the amount of desperation that's coming into the populace, like, if a conservative doesn't directly experience it, they'll know somebody who does. Right? And that's usually how it tips over. Like, that's how it tipped over for the gay rights conversation. That conservatives were against gay rights and here in Canada. I watched this in real time in my own community. When the gay rights issue became like a big thing, and like, the gays and they're sinful and all this kind of stuff. And then suddenly people in the community started standing up and saying, I'm gay. Right? So suddenly they weren't dealing with it in the abstract. That somebody they knew was going through it and dealing with it. And that instantly broke it all apart for them. It immediately created, like, they had to either decide to ostracize the people in their community who they knew and cared about, or they had to accept that maybe it's okay to be a homosexual. And that's what did it more than anything. That they actually met these people, and they actually knew who these people were. And that it ceased being part of the abstract space. And the same thing's going to happen with poverty. That it's going to stop being an abstract issue. And that the people who are still spitting on the poor as it proliferates through the society are just evil. Like, that's it. That there is such a thing as just an evil person. And we're going to know the difference between the people who have been duped and the people who are just evil soon. All right, guys, this is the end of this one. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in order to convince you that all you are is a commodity to be bought and sold. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.